Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome to AVHD Podcast. We're back with Dustin Fisher because we just didn't have enough time on Stanley Kubrick, did we?
No.
There's never enough time for Stanley Kubrick, is there? No, not at all.
And we enjoy your company.
So, once again, we have Dustin Fisher joining us, professor in English and film here at UC. Co-host as normal, Allison Bailey and Hunter Burress.
Hello, guys.
We're glad to have you back, Dustin. Welcome back again.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, we were just discussing all this stuff about Star Wars, all this bullshit about Star Wars, and we're considering doing something about that in the future. But today,
don't get me started.
We are resuming. Today we are resuming our conversation on Stanley Kubrick because we were a bit rushed at the end. So we're gonna begin with The Shining.
Our first part. Can I just say this is our first part 2?
Yay!
Our first returning guest.
Yay!
The audience says this guy again.
Yeah. We hate him.
Yeah, come on.
We got our first troll comment recently, not for your
And
episode.
guess what was
Wait,
what it was about?
Midsummer.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
They said
They were
those
hating
snotty
us.
brats don't understand
Yeah.
the masterpiece that is Midsummer. It brought so
Was
much
it you?
joy.
Did you
Literally,
come
it
troll
was
us?
you.
It was you.
It was Dustin. It brought so much joy. I was really relieved by how much joy it brought to
Wait,
my
it
heart.
brought them
Yeah.
joy?
Yeah,
brought
it was,
me
it was,
joy.
it was like we have haters
we
now.
got so much hate, and people were responding to that person's comment, hating on us
Like,
too.
yeah, man. Like,
Like,
these-
yeah, right on.
They don't know
Troy.
anything.
Wait,
Yeah.
how much did we talk about Midsummer?
It was
Like 2
episode,
minutes.
It was an episode you weren't featured on.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was
Oh.
only for like 2 minutes.
It
Like
was
we
an episode
briefly
with us.
talked
We
about
very
it.
briefly.
But I
talked
just thought it
about
was
Yeah.
hilarious.
I was going to say, because
because-
I could talk about Midsummer.
Yeah.
We very well might get into that today.
No,
Yeah,
I think we should. I watched it today.
Very hopefully we have the time to talk a little bit about modern horror,
have
including
thoughts.
Midsummer
I have some
and the
thoughts.
films of Ari Aster and Robert Eggers. I don't know. There's only one E, so I say Eggers.
I don't know.
So all right.
Robert Egg.
All right.
Yeah,
We're,
the egg.
we're here to finish our conversation about one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, Stanley Kubrick.
And
And
I'm going to say Tommy Wiseau. It's weird.
we're going to start off where
I
we
do love
left
Tommy
off
Wiseau, though.
with The Shining. Dustin, go. First thoughts. The Shining.
The Shining is my favorite horror film. Maybe one of my, well, no, it is one of my favorite films. It grew on me. It wasn't I didn't watch it first and say that was a masterpiece. When I first saw it, and I said this a little bit in the last one, when I first watched it, I was thinking it was going to be Stephen King's The Shining, and
Right.
it's not. There's no
Yeah.
jump scares. It's slow at first, and I was like 16, so I watched it, and I said, I don't know about that.
Jack
so.
is kind of crazy from the start a little
Yeah,
bit.
and I think I rewatched it as well into adulthood, and for some reason it clicked. And I said that was awesome, and that's what
Had
kind
more
of,
for more film literate, probably.
yeah. Well, yeah, I was, and but that's kind of what kickstarted the Stanley Kubrick, and then I started going back and just watching all of his stuff.
So The
The
Shining.
Shining's still my favorite.
The Shining is to you what Clockwork Orange was to me.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, you
Yeah.
did love.
Dude, isn't it cool that Kubrick does that to us? Because we had a conversation. I might have talked about it a couple weeks ago, but Kubrick's The Shining was that movie for me that cemented me into wanting to take deep dives into films.
Yeah.
Before I could talk about them and love them, and they were my whole life, they were my whole world. But it was The Shining that I watched it at like 10 p.m. and I stayed up till 7 reading about
It's long, yeah,
reading
it's
about
long.
the theories. Well, no, I watched it at 10,
Reading
but I
about
stayed
the
up till
theories.
7. I literally walked outside,
The
smoked,
series.
and tried to think about what the hell I just watched.
Yeah, which he wants you to watch it over and over, and that's what's crazy about Kubrick for me, and what's great is his a lot of his films are paced so slow, but once you get into it, you
Yeah.
can't turn it off. It's
Absolutely
like,
not.
They're fascinating.
Yeah,
though.
you just keep, and this part happens, and this part, and that's how The Shining is, where you think about it and you go, well, you got to watch Jack sit in the office, but then you start it, you're like, oh, here we go.
Yeah. And especially like whenever you
Yeah.
review it times after time, literally every scene captivates me from the very beginning. One of my favorite scenes, arguably, is whenever he sits in Stuart Ullman's office and they're talking and stuff like that, and he's like, "Well, I probably should mention to you this accident we had and all that good stuff." And
Jack Nicholson's reaction of just staring at him.
right, yeah, you already got the sense of like what the hell is going on here.
Dude, my favorite. I think my favorite scene is. Oh wait, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. The ominous zoom in on Danny a little bit whenever he's talking. He's like, "Mom, why do we have to go to this hotel?" And he's like eating his PB&Js, and then the bathroom scene, of course, where he's talking to his mirror. You're just like, "What the hell is going on here?"
How he, and this is really when we get into, if we start talking about modern horror, I really point to The Shining and I say a lot of the movies that we're talking about, Midsummer, The Witch, Hereditary, they take from him the pacing and the tone.
Absolutely.
And so you get this tone of dread. You get even though he's shooting in wide angle, which is crazy when you watch it, you still feel like it's this oppressive. Whereas most horror,
claustrophobic.
yeah,
sort
they
of,
would. It would be shot really close, but he uses that wide angle, and it's just
and it somehow still feels
I
claustrophobic.
really love Kubrick's idea of creating the paradox of the maze outside and the maze inside the hotel, where you have a literal, actual maze, the definition of a maze, and the computer, the hotel is a maze within itself at the same time. It's a representation.
And the way
of each
they
other.
use it, I mean, yeah, it's a psychological maze. It's a literal maze. I mean, the layout of it. I mean, in the way
Yeah,
I
exactly.
love those tracking tricycle shots. Which are some of the coolest
Oh
shots
my
in
God.
film.
When we get to Dr. Sleep, I'm gonna rail.
Oh, I know you will. That was one of my things
my
too.
God.
I think my favorite. I have a lot of favorite scenes. I have a lot of favorite moments of that movie. Again, it's a very special movie to me, but I think my favorite scene is, you think maybe we should take him to a doctor.
Yeah.
They filmed that scene 127 times.
And
Why?
I think it's 4 minutes, 4.5
And
minutes. I think,
it's
that
all
whole
it's
sequence.
all one take, is
Yeah.
it not?
With-
Even
See,
all the way up to the point where he gets
wanted-
knocked down the stairs.
He
Yeah.
wanted to torment like Shelley
Yeah.
so much
Oh,
that
yeah.
like it finally would get to the point where she was just like, I can't do this anymore. And now she never wanted to work with him
That's why
ever
all her
again.
hair
The
fell
whole
out.
time with Shelley Duvall was actually really interesting, and like the behind the scenes stuff that Stanley Kubrick's daughter documented and stuff that you showed us in class. Like the whole time she was frigid cold.
Oh, yeah.
No matter
Yeah.
how much stuff or blankets or coats
Wait,
they would
really?
put on her, she was
Yeah.
really frigid cold. It's almost like as if she was getting her own little like ghost story through making the film, even though she didn't necessarily think it was a ghost per se.
What?
She
Has
was
everyone
just
seen that? Have you seen the documentary she shot?
No.
oh, it's so
If
good.
you haven't, you need to watch it.
Can
It's
you
like
tell
a
me
half.
about-
It's a half hour.
Like, what was the point of it? Just her elaborating on how
daughter-
shitty it was to work with him?
No, his daughter shot it while they were working on set.
Oh,
she
no
was just
way.
shooting them working. Shelley Duvall's craziness.
Yeah.
There's a really great scene. And so here's the thing with Kubrick is Kubrick was so meticulous at every aspect. He controlled all aspects of it that
Yeah.
could be difficult to work with. And so
Right.
you see a little of that where there's a scene where Shelley Duvall's smoking and they're in the bedroom scene where Jack Nicholson's getting ready to break down the door. And she's standing there smoking and she's complaining because she claimed that the window was pulling her hair. And Stanley,
Behind the scenes.
yeah, and Stanley literally goes, "Oh, come on!" And he walks over to the window and pulls like this one strand of hair
Yeah.
and shows it to the camera. And he goes, "Don't feel bad for Shelley." And he walks off. And it's like,
One of my other favorite parts of the documentary is whenever they're in the kitchen scene where Shelley is dragging Jack to the thing, and they're filming the scene. I love the part also where he's like filming upside. It's literally
Yeah.
Kubrick himself behind the camera of that shot where it's like the upward shot of Jack whenever he's
yeah.
leaning against the door. That was really cool. One of my favorite parts is whenever they're making that scene. Jack was talking about how I don't even study the scripts. They hand me scripts
Yeah.
every day, and I don't even study them because I know by the time I get it down, there's going to be a new one. And so it goes straight from Jack talking about that over to the rest of the cast actually practicing the script they already have, and then lastly that's my mic, not yours.
Oh.
Stupid.
I tried to cough. I tried to cough and turn my mic off.
yeah.
And I just muted it.
Did you get coffee at Starbucks? 'Cause I was there.
Didn't want you guys to hear my coronavirus. I'm sorry.
You're fine. You're fine.
It's like, fuck you, Logan.
It goes straight from Jack talking about how he doesn't study the scripts to the rest of the cast practicing the scripts, and then over to Kubrick typing up a new
Writing the
script,
script.
literally as they're
Yeah.
practicing it. So that's one of my favorite things about that too. That's
So
a
I do
really
want
great
I do
watch.
want to talk about all the crazy. You brought up the theories, so I do want to. I want you guys to.
Yes.
So that we can address.
Yes.
We talked about the sexual abuse one,
Yeah.
which I have good
agree- I
evidence
agree
for
with.
that.
I need
Yeah.
I need more elaboration on
Yeah.
this.
Well, we
because
can
there's-
talk
there's-
about
because
Bear,
I
there's
don't
Danny.
pick pick this up. I picked more of it up since I've read the book,
Really?
but in general in the film itself, I do not pick that up.
Well, that's interesting that you say
Watch some
that
videos.
because that theme is not supposed to be in the book at all. That's why Stephen King really didn't like. That was part of the big reason why Stephen King did not like this movie.
Stephen King was
Because
mad about
he-
something?
He didn't want to because
Kind of weird.
the character of like Jack is supposed to be kind of
Biographical,
representing,
yeah.
and so the fact that like he's sexually abusing his son, Stephen King was like, oh no,
Hmm.
that's not what I was intending.
So how is this theme of sexual abuse displayed in the film? guys?
Everywhere,
Can you,
constantly,
Everywhere.
the entire time.
I
you
need
guys
more
give us
than
an-
that.
Give us an
Allison.
example. Yeah.
So this is usually the argument of when people question the bear suit guy,
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
and
I
that-
still don't get it.
and that is the scene where it's so out of left field,
Right.
But it fits because that part of the movie is when everything starts to just become uncanny.
Right.
The guy
Nutty.
with the
Nutty.
One of my favorite things about that too is that Shelley Duvall's character, Wendy, doesn't know, like
Right.
she never even picks up on the
Until
theme of
that
the hotel
point.
being haunted, and then all this shit just gets
Right.
thrown at her.
So when you trace it and you look, so the bear suit guy,
Right.
Yeah.
he's pleasuring another older man, clearly, in that
Right.
scene. So what you look at is earlier in the movie when Danny passes out due to with the blood coming in the elevator, he's laying his head, and the back to it is this giant teddy bear behind him.
Oh.
The second part, and this is the part you have to, Kubrick, when Jack is in the hotel, and you know this one, he's reading a Hustler magazine.
What scene is this exactly?
When the people are checking out, and he's reading a Hustler
like
magazine.
whenever he says like, "Hey, nice that you made it here" and stuff like
He
that.
throws it on the table. Now, with the power of the internet, you can freeze and see which. And that copy of Hustler has a story that's why parents sleep with their children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of all things, right?
I
And
think.
so-
It's. How is it not? Is there an
And
argument
then-
that it's not deliberate?
And then
I mean, I
not
thought
only
it
that,
was-
in the beginning of the movie, there's that scene where Danny's talking to that psychiatrist, and he's laying on his bed with his pants off, and he's laying on
Yeah.
a teddy bear pillow.
the kid is fucked
There's
up.
like these constant memory, and then
I
like in
never
his
saw that.
bedroom, when he gets to the hotel, there's a teddy bear poster with naked kids
Yeah.
above his bed. Like there's these teddy
What?
bear themes
Yeah.
subtly is being
How did I
thrown in
never
there
see
constantly,
this?
But
and-
to
because
me,
you're
it's
not looking for
It's
it.
not that
Yeah,
subtle.
That's
I guess
why.
so.
No, because the scene
If
where
you're really
he goes
not.
up and Jack Nicholson is where he sits on his lap, that part is just straight like
Yeah.
abuse because he's
Yeah.
sucking his thumb.
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson is rubbing. It's really creepy.
I do get that.
but
I do get that.
I just thought it was so deliberate. That's all. I mean, I thought that was the direction from Kubrick.
It is,
quite frankly.
because then you can get deeper, and we'll get Freudian here. The issue of work and play, in the Freudian sense, play being sex, and so when you have your sexuality repressed, which a lot of it is Jack's repressed, because he even talks about Wendy's the old sperm bank and all that stuff, and even Room 237, when Jack goes into it, what he sees is a naked woman, and it's
Right.
like his repressed.
Yeah.
But that when Danny goes in there, he's victimized by it, which is Jack's.
Wow.
And that's the bruises on the neck and the
neck of all places as well.
right. And so then you get
Yeah.
even further, and it gets creepy with the twins, where they're asking Danny to come and play with them, which is Freudian for sex. And Jax can't play because he has to work, and it's all
work,
there.
no play.
And
He
so
can't do the play because he's in the.
The point
confined
is, you're
space.
seeing it in a way from Wendy's perspective, and so when she sees the bear suit, that's her coming to terms with what is happening.
Wow.
I didn't get that because like I needed some.
I need to watch The
research.
Shining right now.
Yeah, we can watch it later if you want. I
You won't watch it. You won't watch it the same now that
No,
you
you
know all
won't.
this. Like
I
all
mean,
these
the thing that I
underpinnings.
picked up on, which I was kind of shocked by that I picked up on it, because usually I have to. I'm with you. I'm like I'm just so I'm blown
Infatuated.
away by what Kubrick's usually doing. I picked up on the Native American symbolism.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
in
And
the
that's
movie.
clearly
Es-
there.
Especially the chanting towards
Yeah.
the end.
There's in the
all
art,
that stuff, the
artwork.
artwork as well,
Yeah.
the literal mention of the Indian burial ground.
Yeah.
The
And then there's
manifest,
the
manifest destinies
when they're
stuff.
running into because they're white leaving. They were in Vermont, moving to college. It's like Manifest Destiny moving
Yeah.
across.
There's that's.
But then there's the where
Wendy.
Wendy runs into the maze, and she says, "First one there has to keep America clean." That's a reference to. There's these old PSA commercials of a Native American in the 70s standing on the shores of a polluted river, and it was
course
like
it was.
keep America clean, and he was crying, and that's that reference that she
Wow.
made. Yeah.
I never caught on that
I
either.
fucking love it. How do people debate that this is not better than the
The
book?
thing about the
I don't know,
hotel
see?
for me, what I love is that how there's no real like distinct purpose for why the hotel is as fucked as it is. You know what I mean? It's just a coalition of all
it's
these
just evil
really
place.
terrible events.
It's
and
evil.
But what's amazing
Is it
about
hell?
what's amazing about how he sets it up is he utilizes old kind of gothic tropes of the psychology associated with the evil house, with the evil.
Mm-hmm.
But you can watch that movie so many times and attribute the hauntings to different things.
Right, exactly.
Which is cool because the book, it's literally
The hotel.
there's just haunted
Right,
beings.
yeah.
which,
Creepy
again,
hotel.
We'll get into it, Dr. Sleep, because
I don't know. I like it because it is like
It's
this
spooky house.
It's this manifestation of evil. Like when the movie ends with a picture, I remember one of my theories was like, oh, is this like the afterlife? Or it's like, I had like ridiculous theories. I'm like, are they crowning the next devil or the next person to run this really creepy place? And like there's just, like the lyrics to Hotel California, I think are really important when you implement that
Yeah.
into the story. And
I couldn't. I wouldn't want another ending to that movie.
I
Like
wouldn't
there
want one
was
either.
one where it was there was 10 minutes, and we can get into Kubrick. This goes into kind of Eyes Wide Shut and how Kubrick worked, but he would release a film to like 11 theaters, and then they would get audience response, and he would cut further and then release it. So he released the original cut has 10 minutes where Danny and Wendy are in the hospital after.
Oh, really?
And audiences didn't respond, and he went back and said, "No, the ending shot needs to be that."
What were they doing
picture.
in the hospital?
Just Ullman comes and visits them.
So originally,
That's
directly
lame.
after the zoom in shot,
Right.
it would cut to the hospital directly.
Yeah, they
after
were
that.
at the
Right.
hospital.
And
It was-
I agree that was a good cut to make.
The Shining did the Inception spinning top first. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
that picture to me, I was just like, what the
Everybody.
fuck happened here?
Everybody does that. They go, "What was that?"
Have you noticed the music used for that final scene where they zoom in on the thing has been reused in so many horror movies? Like literally so
I
many.
love that.
Midnight Stars and You.
Yeah. And I thought that was pretty interesting. I do really like that ending though, because the way I take it is that some people say it's reincarnation, right? That Jack is a reincarnation of this guy who was originally there.
Yeah.
To me, I take it as the hotel has absorbed Jack into its history. It has put Jack into places he wasn't originally, but places he is now a part of. In a way,
That's super dope.
That's the way I've always taken it. How have you taken it,
Or
Allison?
he's cursed and he's
Right,
he's
yeah.
captured
I mean,
there.
he
Yeah.
was always a terrible person. So I think for me, I feel like the hotel feeds on like the souls of the terrible people already, and just kind of gets in their head because Jack was already abusing Danny before they got there,
Right.
clearly. And
And
then
he was
once
an
you go back and
alcoholic.
watch the movie, you'll see
But
it. So like for me, I just feel like it feeds on the souls of these terrible people and just makes them kind of
I
crazier.
think it's interesting that none of us talked about the positioning of how he stands in that photo.
But
It's from that famous photo of the devil, literally the hands being
Well,
the
it's
same
that
way.
and the actual real, which I have on my cell phone. This is an actual picture.
Oh shit, that's awesome.
That's so
Of a lot
gas.
of them are like Rothschilds and a lot of big wig. I think
There's
who's
that
the
too.
Hearst and the
It's an Illuminati.
Are there Kennedys in there too, or something
there
like that?
might be, I don't know.
It might as well be. Might as well be.
But it points towards, I mean, you could read it this way where the whole focus of him is he has a contract and he has a duty. And we can talk about this too, where there's a lot of readings of it where it showcases the threat to masculinity in the 70s after the. And so what he's experiencing is he doesn't have a purpose. He can't, like, he does nothing in that movie. Wendy does everything, and he acts
doesn't
like
really
he's
do
doing
anything.
stuff. Yeah, and he ends up writing just dribble
nothing.
and drinking, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
So it's this kind of commentary of what men in his position, especially like working class, are supposed to think that they're part of this elite, but they're not. And so at
Right.
the end, it shows that he's finally, he's arrived, I guess, but he's dead. So
Yeah.
he's frozen in a snowbank. So it's like this illusion
I
of
love that, man. Yeah, that's the
you
that
rising to this,
shot.
but he can't
That
rise.
shot. is the-
I love that shot too, but my dad does like The Shining, but that's what he says is the most disappointing part of the movie to him, is that he feels like Jack should have died in the more epic way.
But that's
him.
the book where he's the
Right.
hero in the book.
Right. Yeah.
But
Whereas
that's
that
been
wasn't
done before.
Kubrick's. Yeah, that wasn't Kubrick's.
Even if it's not
Right.
Kubrick's thing, though, it's like
Right.
I would rather take the edgier ending, the ending that is a bit more brutal, the one that makes me have to think about it and
Right.
talk about it, rather than like, holy shit, he went down in a blaze of glory, he fell down the stairs, I got to
Right.
like,
Yeah.
whatever. Like,
I agree. That's just I think that there
I
are
see where
people
he's
out there
coming
that
from.
feel like my dad in that he should have died in a more spectacular fashion than
and I can
freezing
see
to
that,
death.
no, and I can see
No,
why.
I don't
I really, and I love that it's a hard cut.
I do too.
It's
in
for
this
me-
orchestra, it's the
for
only jump
me-
scare in the movie, arguably.
his jump scares are nothing.
Yeah.
So he'll just use music and he'll say Tuesday.
yeah.
Like, it's hilarious because he's taking, and what he does all the time is he'll take a genre.
Expectations.
Yeah, and he just throws the expectations. He goes,
Right.
I'm going to do horror, but I'm
His
doing it like
subversion
this.
is really I just because like you guys were saying earlier, he's very methodical, and it's like I'm gonna shoot wide, I'm gonna do long tracks, and I'm not gonna, and I'm gonna be from behind. So like when we're going around the corner, we're not in front of Danny and seeing what's around each corner. It's like no, like we're already gonna see it by the time he gets there. So it's like it's really just the fact that he creates. I think The Shining is hands down the best movie at creating an atmosphere.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I agree.
So that for me is why it's horrific. Is that it does give you a sense of just.
I mean,
dread.
in my opinion, there's no more dreading place in film history than the Overlook Hotel.
I think I agree.
The music, one of my favorite scenes, and
think I
every time I watch it, I pick up something else. I said I didn't. So the scene, one of my favorite scenes of the whole thing is where Danny comes out and he's got the bruises on his neck, and she accuses Jack, and he's just sitting there going, which
Yeah.
is hilarious.
I
kind of
love that
hilarious, where
shot,
you're like-
dude.
But then he turns and he's walking towards the camera, and the music, and every time he walks by a mirror,
Yep.
He does some kind of outrage.
I remember
but then
you
he
talking about
stops.
this in class.
But the way the music starts, and as he's walking, the strings will build, and it keeps building as he goes in, and it crescendos, and then as he gets to the bar, it's almost like he planned this as he moves spatially.
Yeah.
The music moves, but then he sits at the bar, and it gives you this like tense. Because you're waiting for this, and then he just sits at the bar, which is his site of.
He was a composer as well as a director. For
I think that's what part of what Kubrick does so well, especially in The Shining, is just planting these things in your subconscious. You know what I mean? Things that like you don't know why you're scared, but you are.
Well, that's
you know what
the
I mean?
sound design, especially. I mean, we could talk about the sound design all day. One, I think just that ringing noise that plays constantly throughout the it fucked people up when they saw it in theaters. One of my favorite pieces of trivia on IMDb for that movie is people complaining about broken theater rooms and complaining about headaches and stuff like that because they're just like, what was this thing that made me so it made people uneasy. And then number two, Kubrick brought a little boombox on the set and would play them.
Yeah, he did.
So the scene you're talking about, he very well could have played it and then had the waltz happen. So it was just perfectly set, perfectly blocked because, you know, almost every scene with Danny they usually had, he's like, Danny, come here, and then they'd play the music. And
You know that Danny, the actor, his real name is Danny Lloyd.
yeah.
He didn't even know it was a horror movie when they were making it. They did not tell him
They
it was
didn't
a horror
tell
movie, which to me kind of it makes sense because he was so vulnerable and able to manipulate as a kid. But at the same time, you look at what he does in the movie. It's like, how do you not know you're making a horror
Also,
film,
I
kid?
don't think
Dumb
Shelley Duvall
kids.
knew that either.
Shelley,
Just kidding.
she got real freaked out in the end.
Just kidding.
Yeah, Shelley listens to this. Shout out to Shelley.
Although after watching Dr. Sleep, I thought no one can complain about Shelley Duvall's acting ever again.
Really?
When I saw the actress playing Shelley Duvall, I was like, oh, how can you do this worse?
I know.
I thought Shelley Duvall actually did good. Well,
She's fine.
You
She's
don't think
fine
she's
for
good
the
in that
role.
movie? I think she did pretty fucking
yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
I think she did great. Like everyone
She
thinks
went
she's
nuts.
like everyone thinks Kubrick like objectified her as the damsel in distress and stuff
But
like
she's
that.
not.
But she's not.
She's like a hero of the film.
Now,
Right.
King did get mad at her casting because in the book, if you remember,
of
Wendy
course
is
he did.
she's depicted as very beautiful and and Kubrick said, no, we want someone that's non-assuming, that someone that clearly looks like she's in an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
Where he said the book is Wendy's kind of just
What's cool about her in
it's
the
fine.
Right, yeah.
What I like
yeah.
about her in the movie though is that like she had so much potential to be a beautiful person. She just looked like something's
She looks
off.
beaten down.
Like she hasn't gotten enough sleep.
She
and,
still looks like she just came off the Popeye set, kind of,
the-
without the costuming.
Was she olive oil?
Yeah,
She was olive oil
I
in
was like, what the
Popeye.
fuck are you talking? I thought you for a second you said she just left Popeyes.
Also,
She's
she
all greasy.
Popeyes.
Finger licking good. Is that what the
That's
what's their
KFC.
thing? What the
No.
hell's Popeyes thing?
I don't-
Louisiana.
Louisiana
fried chicken.
fresh.
Yeah, that's
Oh.
it. That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Shrimp.
Fried chicken. You know what? We're down. We're just to the point.
I've never eaten either of those. So.
At Popeyes.
Oh wow.
It's pretty. I think it's kind of gas.
I like KFC better.
I think Kubrick liked Popeyes. Oh no, I'm just kidding. He definitely didn't like
The
Popeyes.
source of his genius. was
I feel like Kubrick just ate like clam chowder, and
Some rich
maybe
ass
some bread.
I don't know
Smart
what
people.
I
Maybe
don't
some
know.
bread every once in a
What
while.
did
I mean, he ate
none of us
well
know what he
because-
ate?
Oh yeah, that's true though. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, he
yeah.
looked like he was in great shape.
That's part of
Yeah.
why he died, unfortunately.
He did this thing in real life where he would gain weight and then he'd lose weight.
Yeah. I
Really?
mean, when he was a young guy.
Keto
So if you
diet.
see him, he went on these diets and he did a diet in between Shining and Full Metal Jacket because they told him,
Right.
which he ended up just wearing that thing for the rest of his days because he would always carry different lenses.
Yeah.
And so he would shovel these lenses in his pockets and then he would get to the set and go, this lens looks good for that shot.
Right. Yeah.
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 And so people would stand around and say, I don't know what we're doing, but he'd show up and say, here's what we're doing.
When he was a young guy photographer, he was quite skinny. Like not even just like normal build or anything like that. He was skinny.
But
Yeah.
he got about 4 hours of sleep a day because he
Right.
was just, and that's not good
He's on like
for
Batman's schedule, dude. He looked.
Yeah,
He kind of
he's
looked
on
like Peter Jackson at some points. Like they had a lot of similarities. They looked very similar.
Just a bit
With
off topic. Have you
glasses.
seen anything about the Batman? The new Batman they're making with
Yeah.
Robert Pattinson, dude. It
Yeah.
looks so fucking good.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm so excited
I mean,
for it.
I just love Batman.
I'm a
So
Michael
like, when-
Keaton fan.
They're going the whole detective
Batman
route with him
fan?
though. They're going
I
a
like
different.
Michael Keaton as Batman.
They're going a different route with Batman that they haven't really done too much in other films. They're going the classic detective sort of Batman.
We
Which,
haven't
I
seen
mean,
that
that
since the-
sounds really cool.
we've
to
only
me.
seen that in the cartoons, the games, the Telltale series. They're drawing their main inspiration for anyone who knows about it is the Telltale Batman series. It's great. It's free on PS4, and it's Batman being young and being a detective.
Yeah.
And I love that they used the gun that killed his parents for the bat symbol.
Yeah.
I'm like, they're doing cool things. Like, it's just
The Batmobile looks
the movie
crazy.
has to not suck. I mean, that's
Yeah,
it.
yeah, it all rides on that.
Like
Which-
the writing,
fingers
has to
crossed.
be, it's
Exactly.
just in the writing. It's not
I
hard to
got
play
my
Batman.
fingers crossed for Venom too as well because Andy Serkis is directing.
Oh,
Andy
really?
Serkis, okay,
Yeah.
and when you put Andy Serkis behind a project like that, I can't help but have some level of hype behind it.
The only
'cause-
problem is the studio interference.
Yeah, exactly. And
Which we can get into with
on a
as well,
project
Chuck, too.
about that.
oh yeah.
Andy
Okay,
Serkis is
so
directing.
about The Shining, guys. Anything left out that you
I mean,
guys
there's
would want to
so much we
mention?
could talk about.
I know we
Yeah.
could have a whole episode on The Shining.
I
if we
do
really
love
wanted to.
talking about. Is there anything else that we should say about what it did, influence-wise, or things that were like?
We can come back. to it,
I
probably.
would.
What about
if-
the
if-
tricycle rides?
if-
Do you like
if-
the tricycle rides?
Oh, I love
Remember
them.
the tricycle
No,
rides?
that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
I literally I love how the audio switches between the carpet to the hardwood to the carpet to the hardwood, and the tracking shot is
Which
just
that
so
was,
well executed.
they picked that up as it happened. That wasn't planned.
Right,
They said,
yeah.
Well, this is cool. and
yeah,
then
yeah, right,
movie
exactly.
making.
What's your guys' each favorite shot or scene from the movie?
Well, my favorite, I have several different favorite scenes, but one of my favorite shots is the one actually of Scottman Crothers, Dick Halloran, sitting in his hotel bed, and like, you know what I mean, and then it just slowly goes over to him, and all of a
With those
sudden, like,
pictures.
yeah, his eyes start getting foggy out of nowhere, and then he like starts realizing something's going on.
So that's a really, when you watch that, which we did in class, if you remember
cool.
that, and you dissect that scene, the way he shoots it is there are three people, because that's the scene Jack Nicholson goes into 237. But the way he shoots it, where you see Scatman Crothers, and he's looking, and you know he's connected to Danny, and then the next shot is Danny sitting there drooling in his bed.
Right.
And then it goes to 237, which Jack is entering. There's three people in that room narratively, and the way he sets it up is amazing because they're all connected and know what's in that room, and that's where Jack Nicholson goes in. And just the scene, how Jack Nicholson is first like scared, and then
Yeah.
and then he goes to
like
that.
tumbles down the stairs.
Well, he goes to that creepy grin because he
Yeah.
sees the woman coming. Like that's shot amazing.
I feel like
That's one of the
that
best
goes into
scenes
the abuse
overall.
thing.
Between when Scatman Crothers realizes what's going on, and then to the end of Jack leaving the room, I would say that probably is my favorite.
Like I
scene
said,
of The Shining.
mine is him just finally losing his shit. I love the. You think maybe we should take him to a doctor? Like why do you think maybe we should take him? To
Wendy, you didn't let me finish. I'm not gonna hurt you. I said I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna beat your brains in. I'm gonna bash them right the fuck in.
Yeah, I love how it's right the fuck in. Like, like he's perfect.
The scene where he's one of my favorites. If I had to point to, I would say him chopping down the door because
the
Yeah.
iconic scene. Yeah.
he could have just shot it where Jack's swinging an axe and it's typical Kubrick,
Right.
but he moves the camera with the axe, which makes so much more tension
Yeah.
than just there he is swinging
'Cause
an
you-
axe.
It follows the center, like the center of the axe
Yeah,
blade.
it pulls the axe
My
back.
only
thinking
problem
any
with
minute
that
you're gonna come
scene,
through.
my only problem with that scene, and it bothers me every time I watch it, is how whenever it reverse shots back to the door, there's two things cut down instead of one. You know what I mean? There's
the continuity, yeah.
he's only
Little
cutting
mistake.
down one panel, and it's just like, how did Kubrick not catch that?
I love
how did he not catch
that's
that?
an editing thing too.
Yeah.
It's-
Right.
We'll blame what's his face for that.
However,
the film worker.
However,
Talley.
though, there is a cut between that to Holleran coming up. So you could say he might have still been chopping because then he
That's
stops.
awesome.
That's
'cause
true.
He hears the.
That's awesome.
That's true.
But for normal people, like, hey,
What
I
about
have
you?
to see
Yeah.
everything.
Do you have one?
Yeah. Either like the obviously what you guys are talking about, the Here's Johnny, most iconic scene, or like the blood gushing out of the elevator.
That's
That's
the-
also one of the most iconic.
That's probably my favorite shot in
scenes.
all of cinematic history for me.
Yeah.
Like literally, like
I like when Wendy
love that
sees
shot.
it and she's in just a random
That's so
red
cool.
hallway that you've
Yeah.
never seen ever.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that. That's your favorite, really? I think
That
mine
probably is,
I
yeah.
think my favorite shot in cinematic history is Luke confronting Vader in Cloud City, and he goes, "You're not a Jedi yet," and then just both sabers with the orange background and the fog and the blue light.
A tie for me
That
for,
is
for
great.
a
You're
tie
right.
for me for favorite shot of
my
all
favorite.
time would be Clockwork Orange, the very opening shot of just the
Yeah.
That
backwards
is a good
tracking
opening
shot. Okay, so The Shining. I think we can safely say we. Oh wait, one more thing.
I don't know if you could safely say it because we could talk for
Movie rules.
D-
3 hours.
Doctor Sleep.
Oh, we're gonna do
you
that
want-
now.
Uh,
I want to hear
Talk
what you
about
guys
it.
say first.
Okay, all right. Here's my thing about Doctor Sleep.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Is it a good movie standing on its own? I
your
think
case.
it's all right.
Give your case.
Is
You
it
liked
is it a good movie and sequel to one of the best horror films, just films in general ever made? No, but can you really ask that of them?
It's not even a
right.
sequel to it because it's not even the same movie at
Right.
all.
I have a question.
Can
Was
you
it?
really?
Is it an adapted? It's adapted material, right?
Yeah. Stephen King wrote Doctor Sleep.
Yes, so it's
actually,
but in The Shining is loosely based off of Stephen King's book.
Sorry.
So like that's my thing. When fans
no
freak out, it's like you have to remember that Doctor Sleep it has nothing to do with The Shining at all.
Right. I mean,
That was one of the movie's biggest problems, though. It didn't know.
People were so
It
excited.
didn't know what it. It knew what it was. It didn't know what it,
It didn't
was.
Right.
thread that line
It,
very well.
it gave its homages to Kubrick without really tying them in very well, and you're basically you get the sense that this is picked up after Stephen King's version of The Shining, where Jack kind of sacrificed himself at the end to me because there's that scene where Ewan McGregor dedicates his soberness to Jack Nichols to Jack Torrance.
Yeah.
And to me,
Really?
if
You didn't
I
get far in the movie,
if I
did
were
you?
Ewan McGregor, if I were Danny
No.
and my dad, the last thing I remember my dad is him chasing me around with an axe. I'm not sure I'd be dedicating anything to him.
So did anybody read the book, Doctor Sleep?
I have not read
No.
Doctor
So
Sleep.
So I read half.
Okay.
It follows it really well, the half that the book. The problem is, as you said, the book is a sequel to the book The Shining.
Yeah.
However, you get into the movie. I would have liked it better as a sequel to the book, a movie of the sequel to the book. I get why they couldn't do it because you would have regular Joe Schmoes going in
Appeal.
saying, "Why does the hotel look like that?" This
Right.
isn't. So they had to.
And the marketing appeal.
They had to do the nostalgia.
Movie,
There's
yeah.
a lot. It gets super nostalgic.
How would you do that? How would
Especially
you-
up like 3/4 of the movie, it's actually very independent, kind of in some ways.
It is. So
but
the
the,
book.
but, but the,
what
the
ways?
last act of the movie
Is this
is
spoiler
almost
free? Can we do
completely
spoiler? Are we
Spoil
do
the shit out of
spoilers?
it. Spoil it.
Yeah.
I don't-
We'll just warn everybody. This is spoilers.
yeah.
All right. So I got done watching it, and I stared at the TV for another 2 minutes, not saying anything. And my wife said, finally, "What'd you think about that?" And I said, "It happened."
I watched it.
They
God
start.
is dead.
The movie starts with Danny riding his tricycle around the Overlook. However, it's a new Danny because they had to recast
Yeah.
him. But the shots, and it speaks
Yeah.
to the testament of Kubrick's direction.
I know. Yeah.
It didn't even feel the same. It
Not
was
at all.
it looked like a fan film on YouTube.
And it
Oh,
was it was
really?
completely
Yeah.
it was completely different too because
They
in the
didn't
in,
even match.
in the movie Danny opens the door
Can we
in
use-
Doctor Sleep the door opens for him.
Can we use footage or we
And-
get copywritten?
but there is footage.
I
So
want to pull it up of what it looked like.
there is footage. Oh, sorry.
Excuse me,
They
guys, I'm
steal.
dying.
Did anyone notice they steal Kubrick footage?
No.
Did you
oh,
see
No.
it? Did you see it?
I was talking about us using the footage from Doctor Sleep.
Oh,
They
no.
used it. Doctor Sleep used some of
Yes,
Kubrick's
but what
shots.
they did is they made it dark, so it looks like. So he's going up to the
Decrepit.
Overlook, and it's the shot where they fly
Oh
in.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
from the movie, but they turn down all the light.
Yeah.
And so it looks like it's dark out and CGI headlights.
I will
Kid you not. You're staring at me like I'm making this up.
I will admit when that shot was executed, whenever it was the actual direct copy paste shot, except for the dark tones of that first shot going over the aisle, I kind of lost my shit a little bit because even though it was different and I know that it wasn't The Shining, I was like, it just feels so good to see this again.
So okay,
Yeah.
so the
They
basis
Force Awakens does.
the basis is there's this group of people roaming around America, and they find shining kids, and they basically kill them and suck their life out.
Whoa. Holy shit, that sounds super cool.
they actually
It's not.
they actually
the
tor-
movie does not make it that way at all.
that sounds
they-
fucking
they
awesome.
actually
Yeah,
actually
it could be. It could
they
be
actually
amazing.
they actually torture the kids in order to get as much
they
out of them
torture
as
the
they
So
can.
kids.
this is
Yeah.
this is X-Men.
It is. So it turns very Logan if you've seen the movie
Yeah, that's
Logan,
what I was
because
thinking of.
Ewan McGregor, who has super shining skills because
Mm-hmm.
he's Danny, but he's an alcoholic like his dad, which I'm still.
It's in the book, so I couldn't
It
get too mad
is,
about
but
it.
I'm thinking, you survived all that just to turn into your dad,
Right, yeah.
And then the end of the
That's
movie,
kind of poetically beautiful. and
you
cool.
turn into your dad, though.
I like
because
that
The
kind
end of the movie is like the end of the book.
Well, I like the idea of him
The end of The
becoming
Shining, you
like
mean?
his father.
I thought that too. I thought
That was the big
had to be a
middle
direct
That was
homage.
the big middle finger
What's
to
the big
Kubrick.
middle finger?
They burned the Overlook down. and
which is the original
Danny
ending of The
dies.
Shining. In the book The
Really?
Shining,
Yeah.
Jack sacrifices himself because he like snaps out of it for a second.
Yeah.
He's like get out of here, and he goes inside the hotel and
Danny's love saves him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And yeah.
Wow, that would have
And
been cool.
At the end of at the end of Doctor Sleep, they pay homage to that by doing it very much the same way.
So for
Yeah.
me though, like I really do like the way you're pitching it. I haven't seen it. The way you're pitching of the character growing up and like becoming the demons he swore he wouldn't become is fascinating to me.
It's
It's
a
actually
very
very
King
realistic.
thing,
That's
though.
very realistic. Like you see that a lot with, even in history, princes who don't want to be like their murderous and psychotic king fathers, and they
Right.
end up doing just that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I love that
But
kind
the
of.
whole point is it's not done in the right way.
Right.
The movie
Yeah.
does not. You have to watch it in full because it
Yeah.
sounds so awesome. Like you're all these shining people.
I'm like, what's wrong with
Danny's
the
like
movie,
his dad.
guys?
They don't do it. They don't utilize any of these amazing things
The
in the
Shining
right
people
way.
could have been executed better, but
Yes.
in my personal
Literally,
opinion,
they could have been killed better.
in my personal opinion, Ewan McGregor did a really good
He was
job
good.
for me.
So
Yeah.
I had 3 positives.
Did
for
he
the
have
movie.
the high
One
ground?
was it was Ewan McGregor. I forget the actress's name that plays
The
Hat Lady.
child actress does really good, in my opinion. I'm
she was
usually
good.
not
Jamie
a fan of
pulled
child
up.
actresses, but she does really good.
Yeah, whoever I forget who she is. Both of them were good, and then the third was it made me appreciate Kubrick even more because they couldn't.
Yeah.
So the biggest problem for me was, and I asked a couple of you before, is it a horror movie? Because I watched it and it was very supernatural thriller,
Yeah.
and
Spooky.
including there's a fight scene between Ewan McGregor where he does have the high ground, by the way, and
Of course he does.
they're throwing each other around the room with like the powers of their minds.
Is it
But
like
then
it's,
he-
it's,
Yeah.
it's
but
the
then-
Gandalf fight
but-
from Fellowship of the Ring where they're just like spinning on the
So
floor?
then you hit. So what happened for me is they didn't capture. Kubrick captured, as we talked about, tone and like this it's
Yeah.
not there. There's
Yeah.
nothing there that makes you go, "Ooh, this is getting spooky."
Right. I will admit, like I didn't necessarily treat it like how the Shining thing was treated more like a superpower than it was like an
It was.
intuitive ability of
Uh-huh.
certain human beings, like it was in The Shining.
Yeah.
But I will also say that there was some really cool shit that they did, in my opinion. The whole flying each other around and stuff like that, I didn't really like that too much. But the part where she like goes above the world to that chick's room to me, like
That
her
sounds,
spirit
that sounds a
Yeah.
bit Aladdin to me. I don't
Dude,
know.
she
dude,
flew,
dude,
and then the
the-
earth.
dude, I thought that was badass. I
Did it
thought that
look-
was really
did
cool
it look cool?
cinematography.
Oh, it
It,
looked-
it looks
But-
it looks cool.
But the whole
long as it
movie is
looks
just
cool.
it's like a clusterfuck, to be honest. Like it's
Yeah. It
kind of
is. It's
like all
messy.
over. A
But
lot
it's
of it doesn't
messy
make sense.
they had to throw in
Yeah.
nostalgia.
I want to
They
see the
have to,
sci
they have
dude.
to.
As someone who isn't like, I've read the Shining book and I liked it and all, but like as someone who's not super into the lore of the books and stuff, if I started seeing this Saruman v Gandalf fight, I would be like, what the hell? Is
That's
going
what
If
it
they
was
would have,
like.
like,
Right.
honestly, if they would not have worried about paying any honor or
I
homage
do
to
agree.
The Shining,
I do agree.
Doctor Sleep could have been really cool. If they
I
would
do
have just
agree.
did it,
Could it have
its
been,
own
though? I
thing,
mean,
and
the-
focused
but-
on making some of it cooler, it could have been fine.
I think
but
making it a
at-
character study would have been
At the end of the day, was it better than you thought it was going to be?
No.
No.
Okay, so here's what happens. It got to a certain point, and it was really early on when they started showing the secret boxes in the maze, and I went,
Explain what you mean.
"Oh, so he figures out through hollering.
He was
Yeah.
still alive. Or sorry,
He's
sorry.
alive in the book.
Yeah. Yeah.
so
yeah.
they had to do. Oh, it's a ghost he can talk to because
Yeah.
in the book,
Anakin,
Halloran's there.
All right, Luke, you must go to
Yes,
Dagobah.
yes,
Yeah.
that's what it is. But Halloran
What?
trains him that he can lock shining ghosts because the woman in the tub is still harassing him.
Uh-huh.
He can lock shining ghosts into these boxes in his head. Spoiler alert: the boxes in his head are in the snow maze.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, not in the book because the maze
It's
isn't
already
in the book.
convoluted to me.
exactly.
So, but as a trained film watcher, you would say, foreshadowing. He's gonna let all those out. Guess what
Yeah.
happens? So
Yeah.
it hits a certain point, and I go, "Don't do that! Don't do that! Don't do that!" And then it did it, and I went. There's a scene where they're in the car, Logan style, where he has
Yeah.
the girl with him. and
Last
they're-
of Us style.
Yeah, and Last of Us. And they're driving, and she goes, "Where are we going?" And he goes, "Colorado." And as soon as he says it, the music starts from the movie. And I
Go on
go,
down to South Park, gonna have us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like just the nostalgia switch, they went like this.
Was it
yeah.
obnoxious?
It was like slight little undertones here and there, like, hey, here's a little,
Yeah.
here's a little homage, and then,
But then
let's
it
just
was-
dial it way the fuck up for this
Sparks
final
flew
act.
out of the
What'd they-
switch.
Yeah.
What did they do?
It was just straight
He
fan
walks-
service, dude.
So he walks around the Overlook. I will say it was cool that they recreated it.
Yes.
The sets.
How
and they
was
made
it?
they made it look old, like it
Yeah.
because they boarded it up.
They recreated it really well.
It was. But then they tried to recreate the shots. So the scene, he comes around the corner just like Jack did, and he's walking down the hall, and they try recreating it. However, instead of the strings and it's the heartbeat. They play that heartbeat through the whole movie. I got so sick of hearing it because I'm like, he used the heartbeat in one scene.
Right.
You're using it like.
I actually don't remember the heartbeat.
It's when he's
going
into 237 and he sees hollering and he sees that's the heartbeat playing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But and then he gets to the bar and Jack Nicholson's there. Not Jack Nicholson because it's disappointing because it's hard to cast a person to look like Jack Nicholson. So
he didn't do the film. He could have just been there.
No, they couldn't
He's
have
young.
got Jack to do that.
Fat Jack would have been.
That would have been awesome, right?
With his fucking Lakers glass, like,
Smoking a cigar.
Hey!
Kubrick was the man, or whatever he says in that.
When I say to put a body in the marsh, I mean put
But then
a
they do
body
this.
in the marsh.
Here's another good one. Ewan McGregor's still roaming around the hotel, and it's coming to life because in the book, the hotel feeds on Danny. However, Kubrick took that and went, nope. So it made no sense in the movie because that's not in. So he goes in, and there's a lot of this. The hotel's coming alive, and that's not in the movie. But he's walking down the hall, and you know what's coming because he's walking down the same hall as when he's on, and he turns the corner, but no one's there.
Yeah. And then they basically
I'm not really overwhelmed by what you just said.
and then they basically do it again where
then
they
they
are
are
there. And it's like, why'd you even tease that they weren't there in the first place?
Spooky ghosts because he opens the boxes to beat Supernatural Lady.
I don't like the idea of this box.
He lets them out, and then she turns around, and I kid you not, the twins are standing there, and they say their hello line, but they have like opaque eyes, and then they attack. So he uses them as weapons. So you have Grady, and they say their goofy lines.
And then they come after him afterwards.
No, the thing is, though, the killing of the Shining kids and to me, if I would have done this movie, I would have made it a character study about him realizing he's Jack, and the only reason he would go back there, and like just constantly losing his shit, having family struggles, maybe flashbacks of abuse, just like really learning about this new fleshed out character, and the only reason we'd ever go back to the Overlook is to just try and get in the mindset of his dad, and I would end it horribly. I would have him actually go crazy and freeze in the
He
snow
does. He actually chases her with an axe.
Yeah.
But then
he chases the girl with
But
the
then
axe.
she saves him with the power of her love, and I went, oh my God.
So
Stephen King's
pure.
sitting at home right now.
Really?
Like,
Stephen King was like crying, like, this is why I love the movie. This is what I wanted.
I did it.
I don't necessarily like the concept of him unleashing the ghosts on the chick. I do agree with that. But I do like the line that he delivers whenever he does do it.
What's he say?
She's like, what do you got in there? Because she's like looking inside of his brain. She sees the boxes, and she's like,
I forgot about that.
I can't remember whatever she says, and she's like, what are they? And she was like, they're not. He says like something like, they're not something. They're starving. And then he like lets them out. And
No, that's cool. I'm sure that's super cool in context.
It's neat.
The boxes thing are just odd to me.
It's neat.
Because it's just kind of like a Ghostbusters thing. It's like, sick 'em. You know, like what? I don't know. Because again, the thing I like.
Ghostbusters did that better.
If there was potential there to make it a lot better than
I can't
it was.
comment though. I haven't seen it. Like my opinions are relevant. I'm just saying like. Conceptually, some of the stuff you told me sounds really cool.
And if it would have been utilized the correct way, it would have been cool.
Well, Logan, I know.
It's got an IMDb rating of 7.5.
Which makes me so upset.
It's high on Amazon, too. There's movies I love.
Everything's high on Amazon.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know, Amazon, dude. It's like 5 stars. And then I hung out with someone over the weekend. She has like this old ass version of Netflix where it's still like the star system. I'm like, oh, cool. You know what they do now, right?
Yeah.
So now it's like. There's this great thing Bill Burress said where it's like, thumbs down, thumbs up's a terrible rating system because it's like, stubbing your
Yes
toe,
or no,
Adolf Hitler, they're both thumbs down. So I don't really know.
Right.
So anyway, 5-star movie, Gerald's Game. And I'm like, okay. And
It's
she's like,
five?
it's a Stephen King adaptation. And nothing against her. She's listening. She knows I love her. And I was like, okay, let's do this. And then I was just looking at her, I'm like, this is fun, but it's not. I mean, this is like a 2.5, 3-star. Like, I would give this a 4 out of 5 out of 10.
So here's what's weird for me, and you guys can argue with me if you want, with Stephen King. He's very preachy when he got older, and he likes to...
He J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, he wants to
hard.
preach to everybody. But his books do not treat women kindly, minorities kindly.
No.
But then he wants to sit and preach. It's like, you always have magical black characters in your movie, which is...
Yeah, and his TV shows.
Yeah, and he still kind of does it. And you
black.
Yes.
all of his, if you look at all of his, there's always a magical black character.
And all the Hulu TV shows, it's the same thing.
Uh-huh.
and he loves them all. And that's the thing. Like
He
Stephen
loves them
King, the reason why a lot of his
He
stuff
loves
has
his
these
magical
amazing
black
ratings
man.
is because he has this cult following. People will
And he has a
listen
format.
to anything he
respect
has
him.
to
I
say.
respect
If
his
he says
weirdness.
something's amazing, all of his fans will be like, "Yes, of course he's right."
I
But all of his stuff is the exact
Shawshank
same.
is Shawshank's really good.
His
I-
TV
I-
shows are based off of all of his movies. and
Shawshank
it's
is
the
really
same
good.
thing.
I definitely respect Stephen King's impact, not just in authorship and writing, but in the consequent impact he's had on the film thing.
No,
for,
I'm not.
for better or worse.
Also,
Yeah,
shout
I'm
out
not-
to R.L. Stein.
Um,
He's better.
I
I,
love
just
it.
kidding.
I will.
Goosebumps
I will.
guy.
Goosebumps is amazing.
I grew up on Goosebumps, which is part of my
Right, yeah.
problem. And later in life, I realized a lot of those storylines are repurposed Twilight Zone episodes.
Oh yeah, they
Because
are.
I love the Twilight Zone, and then
Yeah.
I really got
Right.
into the Twilight Zone, and then I started going, wait,
Wait
It makes
a
sense
second.
that you
I've
like
seen
Kubrick.
this
Is this
before.
the child's
Makes
version of
sense that you like
Twilight
Kubrick
Zone?
if you like Sterling so much.
Just out of curiosity, where did The Shining rank on Stephen King adaptations? It was one of the first, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't it?
Carrie was
Mhm.
earlier. Carrie was 70,
Never
Three?
seen it.
Love Carrie.
73.
77, I think.
Oh.
Yeah, 77 or 78.
Is that a telepathic?
Carrie, the
half-naked
first
woman?
Carrie movie is actually good.
Good horror
Yeah.
movie.
It's good.
No,
Now, that's what I
it's
would,
a,
I
it's
would
a
consider
classic.
that scary.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
and
a good movie.
and it's a
Yeah,
classic.
it's
Most of those movies
awesome.
are campy now,
But
but I
again-
love them.
But again,
Yeah.
in Carrie, he treats women in a very.
You're suggesting he might have a.
Well,
certain
all the
agenda.
cheerleaders and all the girls in high school walking around in like really
She gets her
skimpy clothes.
period. It's so they, and that's what
Yeah.
brings on her magic because it's her
Right.
menstrual cycle.
Because they're all
It's kinda like-
showering together. Yeah.
You laugh, but that's he
Yeah.
does that a lot
Yeah.
in
No,
like Tommy Knockers. If you've ever read that horrible book, has anyone read Tommy Knockers?
No.
never heard of
The first, this is not an exaggeration. The first 40 pages are describing the main character's menstrual cycle
Holy shit.
because
Sounds
the UFO
enthralling.
that's buried under the
Vagina.
ground has activated, and for some reason it messes with her menstrual cycle,
Yeah.
and that's where I stopped reading.
I
I was
don't.
like, I don't know why.
I mean, I'm pretty sure I would have stopped reading it if I had read
So-
it at the child orgy scene.
The
Wow. It's
Wow.
a weird book too because it becomes kind of cosmic and stuff. Like I actually
the
like
turtle, the cosmic
I
turtle.
kind of like some of that stuff with Stephen King conceptually. I'm like, you're getting kind of Lovecraftian, which is fun.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of his own
Cosmic
take
horror.
on Cthulhu, which is cool.
That's neat.
But like, I don't know. I don't think he's done anything that fascinating with the material. I'm like, it's just fun to learn about, read about in like a wiki or something. Otherwise, that's about the extent of it.
You go, oh, I get that.
I like the concept, but I don't want to dive any further into
that,
it.
That happens. I have a lot of examples where I'm like, I love the lore here or the concept of it, but the way it's executed is kind of lame.
So, speaking of how people treat women, Kubrick gets a lot of
beats with
Yeah.
harsh criticism for how his films depict women. So I will open that up to you because I have my own kind of.
I think a good way to jump into that would be Full Metal Jacket, just really quickly. I mean, the way he treats women in Vietnam and stuff like that, and how they're talked about among the soldiers.
accurate though.
And yeah, I do
Yeah.
agree. And don't get me wrong, I am on the side of Kubrick actually representing how females were treated as versus to encouraging that kind of
He's
behavior.
unapologetic.
And I hate when people mistake that. I really hate when people mistake one for the other because
Well, what he does a lot, and this is me, I guess, jumping ahead.
Feel free.
What a lot of his films are about, and it's hard to say this nowadays, but they're about masculinity issues.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so the problem is
Yeah.
you have a lot of movies that are his movies are about men. But the thing is, he's not glorifying it and saying this is great. We're men. And, he's not Michael Bay. Michael
Right.
Bay's glorifying and how
He's
manly
more of a
men
Paul
are.
Thomas Anderson.
He's more showing you these problems. The Shining is a good example. Like Jack is a horrible character, but he's saying like what is causing this. The same with Full Metal Jacket.
Mhm.
The whole point of that is showing you how the military war dehumanizes people, especially men, and then sends them to go kill, and that's what you get
and
is
it actually happened. Like at least in that case, it did actually
Born to
happen.
Kill.
right.
It's like the people because like I'm always trying to show people my favorite show of all time, Mad Men, and they don't often
I
make it.
love Mad Men.
I've seen it 8 times. I love it. They don't make it that far because it is
Yeah.
it is very sexist.
It's
And
a drama.
but I'm like, the funny thing is actually the women are the hero of the show. And it's just in the first couple of seasons, really, they don't hold back. I mean, one of the first lines of the show is when they slam that typewriter down. They're like, the men made it easy enough for a woman to use. And I'm like, well, they did say that. I'm like, so like Kubrick actually having that lens of realism And like through that, we're depicting the flaws in his male characters. Like I said, Paul Thomas Anderson does it with all of his characters. He has very flawed men, deeply flawed men.
I just
who
watched
interact with women.
Magnolia for like the third time 3 days ago. Have you ever seen Magnolia?
Oh my God, bro!
Dude.
Have you seen There Will Be Blood?
It's on
Yeah.
it's on Netflix, dude. I'm serious. Go
Good.
home, watch
That's like my
Magnolia.
favorite.
Super good movie.
He's seen There Will Be Blood. At least he's seen that.
I'm not
Yeah,
even gonna
I've seen
explain
that.
anything about Magnolia. You just got to see that.
we always are quoting lines from that movie.
Yeah.
Find a straw.
I am the third revelation.
But like the thing with Kubrick, they levy he's a misogynist. That you don't have all these, but when he has female characters that are more than just he's showing you like men are treating women terribly.
yeah.
Like Clockwork Orange. The
Especially
point is
Clockwork
they're
Orange.
treating people terribly. But when he
Yeah.
has female characters like Alice in Eyes Wide Shut,
Mm-hmm.
they're actually really good characters. Or there's the scene I forgot to talk about in Paths of Glory, where the very end of the movie, the German
Yeah.
woman comes out and sings, and all the men are, which was
We love that scene.
that's his
We love
wife
that
in real
scene.
life. That's
We-
where he met her.
Wait,
That was
who
Kubrick's
yeah,
wife?
That's his wife.
No shit.
His wife's freaking.
That's where he met
a
her.
dime.
That's where he met her.
Yeah, his wife's a
But the whole
dime.
thing is like he uses
Not to
women in a
objectify
way
her. Ironically, I'm
to illustrate the problems with masculinity.
which is
Yeah.
like one of the best ways to do that.
He does that really well in Lolita for me as well.
Lolita's the
It's-
same way.
I don't.
Because she's kind of a hilarious character.
yeah,
Yeah.
she is. She's actually
Why,
really
I just don't
funny.
know why we're criticizing the artist for his art. I can see the.
I
get.
agree.
I get drawing parallels, but it's like it's kind of an immature thing to do just to go into that and do that. Because a lot of people, especially in today's society, will. And a lot of times it's rightfully so with
Yeah.
the Me Too movement and stuff. But there's times where we jump on the assumption, and I'm like, well, this is his art, and there's a message
Right.
there. Like he probably isn't a sexist, even if he does horrible things to women and stuff.
I mean, he was married for years, like 25 years or whatever, and he had 3 daughters. Like,
Right.
and his wife has even defended him and said,
his own family has come out and said like you guys realize he's like the least. He's not sexist at all.
It's
Right.
more.
He's not racist
Am I
at all.
harsh
He's
to
not
say
any of this stuff.
it's more interesting material? Does that make me harsh when I'm like I actually enjoy seeing the hardships that are depicted there because it builds the world and
I
it
agree.
builds the character? I mean, we're talking about The Shining again. Like that the female lead in that movie, I think has an amazing.
she does everything in it.
I really love the way women are in Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings as well, with
Lord of the
Arwen,
Rings?
hell
yeah.
Arwen the independent elf and stuff like that.
How much time
And what's her name? The Theoden's daughter or not daughter?
have no-
Niece.
I'm-
Niece. Yeah.
You're way
I
out
can't
left
remember.
field
I
for
can remember
me.
her name, but she's like a chick. She's like
Elves.
she
What's
kills
that, really?
she kills the final guy saying like I am no man.
Yeah,
So,
the girl who chops off the writer's head.
yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I don't know her name
I do
either.
agree with that. Do you guys want to talk about Full Metal Jacket at all, or should we just
Yeah, we can
jump
talk
right
about
into
it.
Eyes Wide Shut?
I mean, I have a lot to say about Eyes
I
Wide Shut,
kinda-
but-
You know what?
Whatever you want to talk about, Dustin. I guess.
You know what?
You're leading this dance pretty well.
I think just to go over Full Metal Jacket really quickly, we all have talked about it a little bit before. We all unanimously pretty much agree that the first half of the movie is what makes Full Metal Jacket what it is.
Yeah,
The drill sergeant scenes.
it's great.
It's not necessarily that the second half is bad. It's just that the first half is so good that it overshadows the
Yeah.
second half.
Yeah, that character. I think it's one of the best cases of a supporting character stealing the movie.
Yeah, I
Like,
agree.
If not one of, like, one of the most.
Did he
iconic.
get anything for that, by the way, drill sergeant guy? By the way, he was an actual real drill
I
sergeant.
know. I watched
Yeah.
Film Worker, which I want to. We should talk about that.
we
too.
need to talk about that because
Um,
I have
Good.
things to say.
Something that I love about that guy.
Of course.
That guy. Do we know the actor's name who plays the drill sergeant? Do we know him?
No.
He.
It's Lee or me.
I'll let you think on it because the cool thing about him is he's typecast and like so he's the guy in Toy Story. He's the little green army man.
I did not know that.
He's in Iron Giant. He's the general. Like
He's in the Texas Chainsaw
like,
Massacre remake.
Really? Every time.
Oh, that's right. He's the police
He's the
sheriff, isn't
sheriff,
he?
I've
and he's the
never-
same character.
Yeah.
I've never seen that. Oh, R. Lee Emery.
Yeah,
R. Lee-
yeah.
Thanks, Ryan. I haven't ever. He came
Fact
by.
checker.
He's like
Ryan.
hiding.
Yeah. Shout out audience if you
Yeah.
can spot Ryan.
Yeah.
He's out there.
Challenge of
He's
the
out
episode:
there.
Find Ryan.
Wearing a red and white shirt and a little hat. Where's Waldo? Yeah, I love that guy because he's just the classic. He's just the quintessential like army.
But
guy
in that
now,
whole, the
always
whole
yelling.
first part is just showing you how they're dehumanizing
Right,
them.
yeah.
And it's so sexist driven where they're holding their crotches. and
Right. Yeah.
It's
The,
funny
the,
as
the, the opening
wait, the
shot of
women
them
or the-
shaving their
the men.
heads.
Oh, the
Yeah.
man. I'm
They're
about to say
all
it's funny as
they're
fuck.
all reluctantly
No,
getting
it's
their
hilarious.
they're all reluctantly getting their heads shaved. You know what I mean? They practice that speech with the gun, like this is my gun.
Mm-hmm.
This is no one else's gun. This gun was made for me, or something
And
along
they
And
those
that
lines.
stuff is all fairly accurate, though.
Right,
It's a
yeah.
real-
It's pretty much 100%.
Yeah.
From what I've seen.
And who Private Pile actor he's doing some stuff nowadays, but he
Men
does
in
a
Black.
really great job as well, just playing this mentally, not necessarily. I mean, I can't really. I've always wondered that myself. Is he like actually like mentally like disabled, or has he just had like a really rough childhood?
I think he's slower, but I think what takes him to the point of is what takes it is the berating. And
Yeah.
they beat him, and and that's what finally.
the donut
leads
and
him
stuff
over,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, pretty much
I mean,
on
the
Full
pro-
Metal Jacket.
Dude, I
So
keep
the-
getting freaked out by those squeaky chairs. I just took off my headphones. I was like, what is it? I'm like, dude,
So one of Kubrick's
the
biggest
ghosts are out of the box. Sorry, it was
standing
just
over
bothering
there.
me. I couldn't tell what it was.
What really hurt Full Metal Jacket was because Kubrick would spend so long on these movies, and early on he said, "I want to do a Vietnam film." Well, no one had touched Vietnam yet because it was so fresh, and it took
Until-
him so long to make it that by then Platoon had come out, Apocalypse
Yeah.
Now had come out,
And
it kind
Heart
of
of Darkness, which I think is just as good as Apocalypse Now. You need to watch both of them together.
Yeah, but-
which is the documentary named after the book it's based off
Yeah.
of. So.
So what hurt it was those all came out, and then they kind of turned to Kubrick and said, "Are you still going to release this?" And he said, and that happened to him with Napoleon, which he never
Right.
got done. But he was
Really?
gonna do a
I don't know anything about that.
he wanted to do this movie on Napoleon. It was gonna be this huge epic, and it just kept getting
It
shelved.
was
and
his child
shelved.
project
Yeah.
Could've
throughout
been
almost
like
his
a
entire
Cleopatra
career.
kind of thing with those set designs could have been insane.
Yeah, well, what happened was Barry Lyndon essentially.
Yeah.
He kind of yeah.
I'm not mad.
No, I know. Yeah, and he still
Barry
had the
Lyndon's terrific.
he wanted to do a Holocaust film. And what happened was it was called the Aryan Papers. And what he did so much research. And by the time he got done, it was in between Full Metal Jacket and Eyes Wide Shut. Stephen King came out with Schindler's List.
Yep.
And so he literally,
Steven Spielberg.
sorry, yeah,
Yeah,
Steven
yeah.
Spielberg.
I was
We
like,
were on
wait.
the
I was
King
like,
thing.
whoa.
No.
I mean, that's a whole nother ball of wax.
No,
But
yeah.
Steven Spielberg came out with Schindler's List,
Which
and
is-
he had years, and he just said, starting over.
And Schindler's List was so good. It was just like they can't take another in-depth movie on the
Yeah.
Holocaust right now.
When did Deer Hunter come out? Because that's one of my
That was-
favorite.
that was in
Vietnam- Was that
72,
another
yeah.
one that? Because like to me, that's
Deer
one of the-
Hunter, that's a messed up movie.
I think it's like my second or third war film.
Christopher
That's
Walken.
that's the De Niro scene where he's spinning the gun and putting the gun to
Yeah.
his head. And, like they're playing Russian roulette.
Russian Roulette.
So that you talk about there was such a good coverage of like the psychological warfare that took place in Vietnam, and then the way Apocalypse Now does it with the camaraderie and things. They cover a lot of that as well.
And that's what happened to Full Metal Jacket. Is then it came out and everyone kind of said,
Platoon did
Another
the abuse
Vietnam movie.
"We've seen the Vietnam movies," and they.
and Forrest Gump.
Not that it's not good. Like you watch it now, it's a
Right,
great
yeah.
film. But
No,
Right.
it is really good. Sorry, guys, I'm in a
Stop
funny mood
that.
today. I'm sorry.
Funny mood.
I'm just in a mood to be goofy today.
Forrest Gump would help that.
I love the
I do
scene where
love
they
Forrest
homage.
Another movie about a white guy
I love-
saving all of the black people.
I love where they homage.
That's it. The entire movie is him. He
cure-
steals
oh, yeah, he
like
cures
Elvis's,
racism, I
like-
think, in a
oh,
way.
it's- yeah, he cures racism.
I love where fuck I shouldn't have said that. I love where they do the homage of Full Metal Jacket. He's like, God damn it, Gump, you're a
Yeah.
goddamn genius. And he's that was the best goddamn thing I've ever seen, Gump.
Now that I'm older, watching Forrest Gump, I haven't watched it in a while, but Lieutenant Dan is the best character.
I agree.
He's the
Yeah.
only one
Yeah.
that develops. He's
Yep.
the only one.
I love
that,
Forrest too.
but he doesn't do anything. He's just
Yeah, but he's
saving
so fucking
people the whole
precious
time.
the whole time. I love.
Well,
and
yeah,
I like
you're meant to love him.
Jenny develops.
Like
Exactly.
you are
Jenny
you are groomed
develops.
to love Forrest the
Hey,
entire time.
Jenny has
The
developed.
thing about Forrest for me is that like
she gets AIDS
even
and dies.
even though like on paper he is played as
does.
this like
Spoiler
hero,
alert.
like the guy behind
4 years
everything.
old.
I just love how Forrest like just he doesn't go out of his way to be those things. You know what I mean? Like him just naturally as a person just finds himself in all these situations and
It's a
stuff like
fine
that.
movie.
It's tongue in
Yeah.
cheek.
It's a fine movie.
It's a fun
I think it's
movie.
great.
Exactly.
I think I actually do. Look, I think
It is a white savior narrative, though.
It's
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
no, it's just that it has the it has the expectations on the pedestal at one
I mean,
best
it's Robert
picture and a,
Zemeckis.
Zemeckis, I think the music's great. I think
The
the
feather
acting's
floats
great.
around.
I love
Soundtrack is awesome.
Soundtrack's
whatever
good.
for that.
Yeah.
It's the
Soundtrack is awesome.
best soundtrack in any
Soundtrack
movie.
is good.
I'll full stop say it's the best soundtrack in any movie, but whatever.
Its depiction of Vietnam though is pretty good.
It's
Like
pretty
when he
cool.
goes to Vietnam, that's probably my favorite part of the movie.
Es- Especially since it's only such a really
And it's
short,
short,
specific part of the movie.
Where they're just walking around because that was a lot of Vietnam.
Dude,
was-
I don't.
the
And then
napalm
it's
was
just
done really
getting-
well.
My favorite part is when he's in DC. Fiat fucking.
Yeah.
I love.
He goes to the
history.
Black Panther rally and
I
saves
know.
people there too.
Yeah.
No, he gets his ass kicked. Well, I don't know. I actually love Forrest. He's a character that doesn't. Some characters, I think it's okay sometimes for characters to not have development if they're interesting, and then therefore you have your side character. All of the side characters in that movie go through development or tragedy,
Yeah.
which is really cool. And it's funny because the movie's tone doesn't reflect that really, but I think it still serves the benefit because it is a tongue-in-cheek kind of movie.
Well, and
but
you don't necessarily need characters that develop,
no, you don't.
Right. And
Back,
that's why-
Back to
'cause
the Future is
everyone-
one of the best examples of it. Indiana
which is
Jones
another
is one of
Robert
the best.
Zemeckis movie. He
That's
doesn't
what I'm-
like character
Yeah,
development.
yeah,
He
he
did a
just
Polar
knows-
Express.
He almost did an Indiana Jones flick too. Like he did Polar Express too.
No development, absolutely zero.
That movie's scary as shit.
Oh
dog.
yeah, that's a horror movie.
It reminds me of BioShock when they go into the.
I love
You
Bioshock.
guys
When-
think
when
you
they-
guys think Polar Express is scary?
Oh,
that
it's
movie's
that-
fucking
it's that,
horrifying, dog.
It's that uncanny valley where the people are so bizarre looking because the
The,
CGI had
It's
the homeless
scary.
people are terrifying.
No, dude. Scariest
The
thing about that
hobo?
movie
Yeah.
is scariest thing about the movie is when they walk into Santa's workshop. It's empty.
That's awesome.
It's very.
See, though.
It's
Yeah.
the wide shots. Like you better not pout.
Okay, that part is a bit creepy. I will say
And
that.
I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I want a video game of this where I have to break out of Santa's workshop and all the elves are trying
It's
to kill
straight
me.
out of the movie Krampus, if you've ever seen it.
I haven't.
Great movie. You need to
But
watch
anyway,
it. Anyway,
finishing thoughts on Full Metal. I mean, I don't know. You guys covered it pretty
I
tooth
haven't.
and nail.
Yeah. It's
Eh.
good. It's
It's a good movie. It's just
It's
there-
not
it's
bad
deep.
movie
It's
at
deep
all.
though. It's
Yeah.
a Kubrick
It is. It
take
is.
on Vietnam.
Extremely well shot.
Of
Fuck.
I mean, the themes of masculinity and like how they're handled with Private Joker is very well done in my opinion.
It's
It-
especially at the end when
the-
they kill the girl that's killing
Right.
all the men, and it ends up being a woman.
right.
And
Yeah.
they all the men are standing around her dead body, and yeah,
They're- yeah.
that's
and-
clear. Like,
right.
Could we
right.
take a
and
second? Oh, wait, sorry.
the hypocrisy of Private Joker is really well like highlighted in my opinion. How he's like how he talks all this stuff about like being ready to kill and like kill these fucking Vietnamese fucks and stuff like that. But then when he gets down to it, he doesn't want to do those.
well,
things.
that's his helmet with the
Born
born,
to
to
kill,
and
yeah.
the other side's that duality, and he even
Yeah.
tells the sergeant about it because he's asking
Yeah.
what his helmet means.
So the movie
Yeah.
has like, was that an adaptation? Or was that
Yeah, it was the Short Timers, I think it was called.
Mm.
I haven't read it.
I didn't know that. Can we take a second to talk about a little bit about Filmworker? Because I am curious
Yeah.
why. We don't have to get that deep into it. I watched 75% of it, and I enjoyed the doc. I mean, for what it was, and I
Yeah.
was kind of just shocked that this guy did that. For anyone who's not unfamiliar, it's about the actor from Barry Lyndon who loved his experience.
Leon
working,
Vitali is his
Yes. He loved his experience underworking Stanley Kubrick so much to the extent where he just kind of tossed his acting career in the trash and decided to
Devote his life.
do
to it.
everything for him. I mean,
Uh-huh.
like, and I don't mean that he literally did everything for him. He did the editing, he did labs, he did casting, he did, blocking, scene staging. It was crazy. So like, what do you
Kubrick directed everything out of his house,
yeah,
his house was like that was it.
the,
And he had
the
he had
headquarters.
4 or
so to
5
speak.
people.
makes sense though. It's kind of cool.
Yeah,
That
he
really.
had 4 or 5 people, and that was.
So what was Leon? I mean, what's your thoughts on that? You seemed a bit
I watched it twice.
irked
actually.
by it when you told me. You were like, I have thoughts on it.
I liked it at first, and then I read the other book by his driver who worked for Kubrick starting at Clockwork. So he was there a lot longer. Have
Yeah,
you read that one? Have you read any? Because I think this is a book too.
I haven't read it, but I'm familiar with it. I thought it was an
The
interview?
problem was in Emilio's book, he doesn't mention Leon much at all.
which is weird.
So yeah,
Everyone else
and he
does.
mentions all these other people that were working around, but he never really mentions him. And I kept because I'd watched Filmworker, and I'm like, where's the? And it gets to Eyes Wide Shut and Kubrick's death, and you don't see him.
I didn't
But
get that far.
The way the documentary plays it is Leon took it all over, and he was
Right, yeah.
editing it. But the book of Emilio's didn't. What happened was, and this is a little bit of me jumping ahead, but
No, go
the
ahead.
day. So the day Kubrick died, the day before, I think it's 2 days before, he submitted that quote unquote final cut.
Who did? Leon?
Kubrick did
Of Eyes Wide Shut.
of Eyes Wide Shut to I think it was to Warner Brothers, and Tom Cruise screened it for his
Warner.
Yeah.
family. Yeah. Went back and in the book, Emilio, because he was kind of detached,
Cruise showed
like
his family that movie. Holy fuck.
Scientology, man.
It is Tom
Yeah.
Cruise.
I don't
so.
think they had kids or anything yet. And
Probably
he's still
not.
married to Nicole Kidman. Anyway,
Sorry.
yeah, he hadn't just created kids through Scientology yet. So Kubrick went back, and Emilio references, because he wasn't in contact, he just kind of worked the perimeters and kept the house clean and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he referenced Kubrick going back to work on it after he submitted it.
So it's
But
not
then he
finished.
said, Kubrick called him into his office, and he was so exhausted he couldn't get out of his chair. So Emilio had to help him out of his chair and up to his room. And he said, and then he didn't come down the next day, and everyone's they just go about their day. And that's when they figured out
Like,
that
let the king stay in his
he
tower.
had died.
Yeah.
The worst part about it is, so he died 2 days later. Emilio shows up on the property to kind of do his daily chores on stuff, and Warner Brothers swarmed. And he said they were in the filing cabinets. They were in the taking stuff out.
How do they have any right to do that? Ownership? Do they technically have ownership?
And
though?
he was, and so he was saying,
Okay.
and there were people, because Kubrick was in such control, and Warner's just like, do whatever.
It's odd though that for his, because he is running it as a business, but it's also his private residence. So a lot of that's
Right.
his own creativity and
And
his
they-
own art. So that's a weird line to thread.
And
there.
Emilio said in the book, it's really sad because they treated it just like the corporates came in and they were just tearing through it, digging, and they were kind of saying like F. Stanley Kubrick because
They were
for
finally looking forward
years
to the
they've
day to
been
do that.
dealing with
Yeah,
him,
'cause
just
he's
Yeah.
so
doing,
hard to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were finally. It was probably kind of cathartic to go in there. and
But
rip
the
that shit
idea
apart.
that they think, and they released this idea that this is what he wanted is BS because then, like I said, he always cut after he released it, so he would have released it and
And then
then
changed it.
Yeah.
So you're telling me
The
Eyes Wide
limited
Shut
release
is
thing.
unfinished?
It
It's
is
a Hideo
unfinished.
No, it is.
Kojima
No,
It is an
Phantom
he
Pain.
unfinished.
died.
This is a Phantom Pain situation. with
It's an
Hideo Kojima.
unfinished. About 75% of it, I'd say, is done.
Yeah,
What?
I agree.
Do we know?
And
What
then
parts
there's these
aren't done?
weird that you can clearly tell it's Warner Brothers.
That Chris Isaac song in the middle
Yeah.
of the, like, clearly Chris Isaac was on Warner's records and they're like, this song probably, because Kubrick probably didn't put a song there yet, so they're like, let's do this one because
Right.
that became the song for the
So
movie.
his daughter kind of took over some creative direction for the project.
Yeah, because at the end they had no idea how to finish it. They were just looking at, and he had shot so much that they
That's
were
so
going
shitty.
through it going, ah. But then when they released it, there was the issue of the NC-17. So the X rating ended, I think, in the 80s. Do you know
That
for sure?
movie used to be an NC-17. I don't know if I
It's NC-17 now, but
really.
NC-17 got in the 90s, it was kind of almost what Rated R became a few years ago.
Yeah.
It was a killer for your profits because people wouldn't go see it.
Mm.
So the studio said you can't have this because he just shot it like there's an orgy scene and they say you can't do that. So they put CGI characters in front of the actual sex scenes.
Yeah.
So once you go and you finally the payoff of you have this whole movie of Tom Cruise chasing like these fantasies, and then once he sees it, you don't even see it. So it's doubling back on it. It's not even helping Kubrick saying like the point of the movie is you experience these fantasies, but then the movie's saying don't look at these, and so they just put characters in front.
That'd be like not showing what Alex saw in his hospital bed at the end of Clockwork Orange.
Right.
Right.
Like that would be such a rob. He just hears the symphony and we don't see.
Or
the
you see
girls.
it and there's just people in front of it, and
Yeah.
that's literally what it is. And you can
That's
find on the internet, I think,
Robbery.
cuts of the rated R version, and there's just cloaked, and you don't see anything. And really, in today's the sex scenes, once you see it, you're kind of like, that was it. That
HBO.
was it.
Yeah.
Can we? I'm really unfamiliar with biographically anything pertaining to Stanley Kubrick's death. So like, how did he die? And like, was it expected? And like, what was the situation there? I mean, interesting that he was on a production while
He died of heart disease in his sleep, if I'm not mistaken.
And Emilio says in the book that when they found him, which they don't talk, he was reaching for he had a CPAP machine,
They
but
don't
back
talk
then,
about it, he said.
yeah, because they're always like, he died peacefully in his sleep is usually what they say. But he said when they found him, he was actually reaching he had oxygen. Because back in the day, the CPAPs they had huge oxygen, and he was trying to get his oxygen tank.
That's sad. That's very sad.
But-
He doesn't deserve that.
Yeah, I
But
don't know much about him. personally.
Emilio, because he was driving him back and forth to the set for Eyes Wide Shut, and he said by the end of production, because he was older, and he still kept that, I'm going to work
Till I die.
20 hours a day, which isn't
It's
good.
Like, dude, that's his generation.
I know, and he said he was so
depression,
tired that he would drop something on the floorboard and he couldn't pick it up. So he would have to help him out while they were still filming the movie. And the movie took 3 years, I think, because it was just...
It's interesting. How do we think it altered his creative touch? Like, for instance, like Scorsese still freaking killing it.
I think the strenuous strains that Kubrick put on himself is part of why his movies are so genius. Because his brain just literally never rested.
And I argue Eyes Wide Shut... If Eyes Wide Shut would have been... Hooray! They like Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah.
That's right. If Eyes Wide Shut would have been completed, I think the way it goes, that would have been his best movie.
I agree, and I just
Really?
feel so
Yeah.
bad because that movie is still
man.
really, really good movie.
It's
It
still
had
a good
so
movie.
much
I think it's probably one of
potential.
my least favorites.
And he didn't get to finish
yeah.
it,
I know.
so it's just so.
It's a
upsetting.
really interesting discussion, more so than me. Like, I'd rather talk about it than watch it. You know.
So since we're on Eyes Wide Shut now, let's dissect the movie itself. Eyes Wide Shut. So just like what you were saying, what about Eyes Wide Shut makes it one of his best movies to you?
Well, how about I throw it to you guys first? What do you think about Eyes Wide Shut? You
Okay.
said you would rather...
Oh, for me, this isn't even really a knock against Eyes Wide Shut in general. I just said, like, I think there is something more given the product we got. I think the conversations and the trivia behind it can be a bit more fascinating. Ryan just went out there and shut those people up.
I know.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, hell yeah, Ryan. I don't know. I think talking about it's really pretty interesting. And then, like, I'd love to know what it was like with Tom Cruise working on a Kubrick movie. So for me, just a lot of trivial stuff that fascinates me.
Tom
more.
Cruise is a... So when I showed it in class, Tom Cruise was like the be-all, end-all.
Yeah.
People would not open their
They
minds
really
up
wouldn't.
to a Tom... And I'm like, would you
Yeah.
pull back from the Tom Cruise?
I was
like the class, yeah, they hated Tom Cruise so much.
The whole, I was there, dude. The whole time they're like, even his lines, which were not written badly at all, they would still like throw it in Tom Cruise's face, like as if they were really bad
And that's
lines or
just
something
such
like
a
that.
dumb mindset. You can't
Right.
have that kind of mindset when you're
Watch
watching.
Magnolia.
Please watch Magnolia, especially if you like Tom Cruise.
He's good at Eyes Wide Shut.
He's good at
too.
Eyes Wide Shut.
He is great in Eyes Wide Shut. I'm not saying he's not. I'm just saying.
I don't have a problem with Tom
I'm just
Cruise.
saying literally the best performance I've ever seen from Tom Cruise is in Magnolia.
Easy. It's
So-
actually
so-
I mean, he's good in an Interview with the Vampire.
Yeah.
He is really good in that
He's good
movie.
in a lot of
He's
stuff.
good in all the movies. he
But
does.
that was their hang-up, and they would not see Pat. I'm like, yeah.
Really?
But anyway, Eyes Wide Shut, go.
Eyes Wide Shut, go. I'll be honest, I haven't seen it since we had the screening of
Eyes
it,
Wide Shut,
since the class, and that is not at all because I dislike the movie. That's not the case. I do not dislike the movie.
It's long.
It is long. It is very drawn out.
Dude, I
It's
don't enjoy
long.
watching it because of that reason.
And I love the almost noirish parts of it, kind of. I really loved when he did that because that's really one of the few times he dives
The
into that,
sets
aside
that
from
he
his
built.
black and white movies.
Like, he
Yes.
recreated Manhattan.
Because he
Yeah.
wouldn't leave England.
Yeah.
He wouldn't leave
and
London.
he
Really?
recreated.
That wasn't on my vision.
No,
Neither was
no.
Full Metal Jacket. He literally built Vietnam over there.
And he
because he
re-
refused
he
to
recre-
leave.
He recreated it.
The guy's insane.
Yeah.
He recreated it in a very specific way too, because it wasn't
It's supposed to look dreamy.
right. Exactly. It's got a lot of lights. It's got a lot of like hues and stuff like that.
Man, it could've been so
It's
cool.
supposed to come across as dreamlike,
You had the lighting.
while also looking like a Manhattan. So I really love the production design. I really love the shots of the movie. It was directed, I mean, beautifully. Aside from the parts where you could kind of tell it wasn't Kubrick anymore. The music, the Chris Isaak music choice, of course, that jumps out to me as well.
I don't think that was him.
There's no way it was.
Especially in that scene where Alice is looking in the mirror, which is a clear reference to
Right.
Alice in Wonderland, and they're playing this goofy
Yeah,
90s blues song.
yeah.
I'm
It's
going,
like, come on,
you're
man.
taking away what this scene is even doing.
And my biggest gripe with the film, however, is that, and I'm sure this would have been corrected had Stanley been able to have his final say, is that I wish there was more Nicole Kidman in the movie.
Yeah.
Because you get a lot of her in the beginning. She's a really awesome. Alice is a really interesting character. Then for 60% of the movie in the middle, she's pretty much all but forgotten about besides a few
but-
telephone calls.
But it's kind of because,
Yeah,
like,
that's
my favorite,
weird.
like, what I
That's
love about
weird.
this movie is that it's like the whole dream is the whole thing a dream, is it not?
Mhm.
But it
Right.
handles the way it handles marriage and the idea of marriage is really cool. But that, like, the whole thing is, you can argue she really doesn't need to be in the movie that much,
Right.
Because the whole movie's about how Bill handles finding out what she
I-
tells him at the beginning of the movie, and
Yeah.
how
Right.
it's all about him and overcoming
I
his
do
own
agree.
masculinity.
I do
How
agree.
does he handle
Right.
knowing
Because he's
that
a jerk
he's
too.
not,
Like, he's
yeah,
a terrible
'cause-
character
oh, yeah.
too.
Right, and I do agree that you don't necessarily need more Nicole Kidman in there. I do
Yeah.
agree with that. The movie is about Bill. It's a Bill movie. It's a Tom Cruise movie. I get that, but at the same time, for 60-70% of the movie, almost it's nothing but Nicole Kidman over phone calls. And
But that scene where she confesses,
Yeah.
that is such a great
and
scene.
I agree. That's why I want more of her in there. You know what I mean? Like because when she is in there, it's so good. Like those are the best
And the
parts
music
of the movie.
is that low like strings, which is straight
Right.
Kubrick.
Right. And
Chris Isaac, no, that is Kubrick.
right. And so to me the movie got really buggy to me whenever I could tell it wasn't Kubrick or
It's
it was
towards
a
the
non-Kubrick
end.
decision. And
I always point to
yeah.
the part where I say this is where I think Kubrick stopped editing the movie, is where he goes back to the prostitute's house and they tell her that she has it. It gets very choppy there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the shots.
I want to make sure this is working. It's saying something it's never said before.
Oh.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, I am alive.
Yeah.
My name is Hal.
He
I
said
can't
days
do
ago.
that, I don't-
Days
You
ago.
know what's happening, Ryan? It might be cat. It said something different last time, so I just want to be sure because it's not letting me stop and hit record again. Just take it off real quick and then just do it again.
It's this digital, man. You need the tape running all over like Pink Floyd did for Dark Side of the Moon.
I got a Dark Side
Got
of
a
the
moon
tapes.
tattoo here, by the way. I do.
My favorite's Wish You Were
We can
Here.
do a hard cut. Sorry, guys. We had
Alright.
we had audio. Ryan put something funny over during that clip. Just a picture of Ryan. Like, sorry. What were you saying
Oh, yeah,
before
it's
that
got
went
the
out?
wall too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, his
Little best
tattoos.
of both worlds.
Show the camera right there.
So-
Any of them, I guess. Pretty
Bam.
cool tat.
I like
Yeah.
animals though. too.
We ended up talking
Anyway.
about Pink Floyd when
We
the audio
yeah,
went
we
out.
stopped with Bill walking into the prostitute's
Oh yeah,
house.
so yeah, there's that scene where, and it's drawn out for no reason, which tells me, because he used to just shoot, and then he would cut it because he thought, well, it's
Yeah.
better to edit, which is a good way of shooting because you just shoot as much as possible and you can manipulate it.
Yeah.
And there's the scene where he just kind of laughs at her for, and it's very, you sit and look and you're like, this isn't the pacing of the rest of the
You're
movie,
right.
and the lighting's different, and the camera's like bouncing around, handheld, and that from there on. And that's why I say 75%. It doesn't feel like that was the editing. That
What a
feels like
shame.
that feels like a placeholder that he said, this is what's going to happen.
Mhm.
It is a shame because I feel like in the scene where he's 20 minutes of him talking to Ziegler,
Yeah.
but it's important to watch that scene because Ziegler does the thing where he taps on
Yeah.
and it represents Red Cloak, where he taps on
Yeah.
and all
Yeah.
the women stand up.
Where you're basically supposed to, through very subtly,
very
you find
subtle.
out that Ziegler is the Red
running
Cloak.
the thing, yeah.
Yeah.
But there's also a way of reading it, which is really interesting, where all the women he encounters are iterations of Alice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when he goes through,
Yeah.
That's cool.
they're all different versions of his wife, but they have masks
the
on.
bo-
so
the
they're
body
all
types
blonde.
are all very similar. They're
Mhm.
all blonde.
So it's
right?
his fantasy of what he thinks his wife is
Could be.
fantasizing about, because it's all
Right.
about his jealousy, is what it is.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, by no means do I dislike the movie. There are many more Kubrick movies that I like more than Eyes Wide Shut, and
Yeah.
I do really need to give it another watch.
Yeah,
It's on Netflix.
I really do. Is it on Netflix?
but it's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous movie.
It's
The
on
It is-
lighting and the
that's my number one compliment to the movie is how gorgeous the movie is. That the
to be
orgy scene,
expected.
yeah.
the orgy scene is so dark and
It's-
so like kind of scary in a
Yeah.
way. Like it's just,
It's almost shot like a horror.
right.
It's
And
cool.
like literally you just get such this foreboding sense of Tom Cruise should really not
But
be here right now.
He shoots that mansion in a similar way that he shoots the Overlook, with the
Yeah.
handheld, and
Yeah.
you go through,
Yeah.
and it's very much in the same manner that
Yeah.
that is shot.
Wait for
That
it.
scene where he comes back in and all the people are standing there, and then they just play that piano.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, like that is
that's beautiful.
straight Kubrick.
That's straight Kubrick.
Um,
I love the part where he's like singing like Latin backwards almost, and like
Yeah.
all the chicks are like rising
The whole
up and
ritual
like
part.
going to their stuff.
How
and
bizarre
stuff.
do you think that was for people to go see in the 90s?
Oh, I don't
Pretty
know,
fucking
dude.
jarring.
I have no clue.
Yeah.
But that must have been pretty risque.
Because when it came out,
No, it was jarring.
the 90s had this weird, late 80s, early 90s had this weird obsession with erotic thrillers. And I think it started with, what's the Sharon Stone movie? Where it's like a noir. It's her and Michael Douglas.
Yeah.
Basic
Oh,
Instinct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then you had
Yeah.
Sleeping with the Enemy.
That's a
and
good
you
movie,
had
actually. I like that one.
Sliver,
I
and
like
you had,
Basic Instinct.
and so people thought, and Kubrick did this on purpose. He cast Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise because they were the it.
they were
couple.
the Brangelina of the time.
And he was again,
love
yeah,
you said
he was.
that.
but he was again playing on the audience expectation that they thought they were going to go watch. And if you look at the marketing, they play it like you're gonna go watch Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise have sex
they're
for
both
an
they're
hour.
both nude in the cover thing, like
Right.
with their stuff covering each other.
But what
Sign
they
me
got
up, I
is
guess.
Right.
no sex.
No sex between them.
Because the whole thing is about Tom Cruise chasing it.
Hardly even any intimacy at all. Like,
Yeah.
let alone sex. But what do they kiss? Like twice in the movie, maybe?
But again, that's
Someone leaves out the damn it.
well, yeah. And so a lot of people were mad because they were expecting, which is
Pervs?
what Kubrick laughing
Bunch
at him
of
saying,
pervs.
"You wanted
Ha.
to come watch this,
Ha.
and it's not."
And
it's
I
this,
think it's to your point about how the X rating is no more by the time the movie came out. So an NC-17 movie, some people mistakenly thought like, well, okay, that's the new X, when really it's just this is R, but it's not
Yeah.
soft enough to quite be R. 'Cause we're
Right.
kind of showing you soft porn, and we got to give this a new rating. The rating systems are dumb.
And then NC-17, I think, went away. I
They're
don't think
dumb.
It exists
And
anymore. I think
then-
now
and
it's
then-
just
and then-
not rated.
And now they'll come back and like randomly, like there will
Yeah.
be NC or not. Yeah, they're fucking.
But then rated R movies started making money again, so now everything's rated R.
Yeah, Jesus came
Ju-
along and made a really expensive Mel Gibson movie.
It's a
and
torture porn film.
Deadpool was a big part of that
Fucking
as
hate that
well.
movie.
Deadpool was a really big part of bringing the R rating back to
Deadpool,
where it is.
I give all of it to Deadpool. honestly.
But just really quickly, a slight bit off topic. Do you remember when I came to you one class asking you, did you ever think if Kubrick should involve Pink Floyd in his movies? Because I did some research and I found out that, because to me personally, like in my mind, Pink
I think
Floyd
he
and Kubrick
contacted
like
him
literally
for-
mixes like really well to me for some reason.
Me too.
And
dude. too.
Kubrick did actually contact Pink Floyd
Uh-huh.
because he wanted to use a Tom Hart Mother in Clockwork Orange, and Pink Floyd actually denied Kubrick because they were mad at him that he didn't contact them for
Yeah.
2001: A Space Odyssey, because Pink Floyd felt that was just right up their alley. Like what they make music for was that kind of
But
movie.
none of the music was modern from that.
There's
Right.
a really but there's
So
a really
it would've been
cool. Someone
jarring.
did a fan cut, and they put the last, was it 25 minutes of 2001 to Echoes.
Wow.
And it's actually pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Whoa.
It would
Yeah.
have to be, yeah. I mean, like,
And
I
it
don't know if
matches
I'd
up.
like that or not, because I love the
no,
ambiance
it's
of
a
that
straight
last
orchestra.
yeah.
It would be a tad bit jarring,
little
like
different.
and if that was part of the movie naturally, and like building up to that's what you get. It would be a bit jarring because up to that point, all you get is orchestra.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I do agree that Kubrick shouldn't have had Pink Floyd in 2001 because the orchestra just does so fucking well in that movie.
It would have been odd.
But
Comfortably numb in the
a
last
Tom
shot.
Hart Mother and Clockwork Orange is something I really would have liked to see, honestly.
So Eyes Wide Shut.
Eyes Wide
Let's
Shut.
talk about the fun stuff, because I loved delving into this when I
Yes.
first watched Eyes Wide Shut. I loved it. I said, but then I was kind of like you, where I'm like, it's kind of long. But every time I watch it, I'm like, nah. I think people need to revisit that film and take for granted the last quarter of it isn't really completely finished. Conspiracy theories.
Okay.
How do you feel about the conspiracy theories?
Well,
I don't know a single
I don't
one.
really
Oh,
know
Illuminati.
too much.
Illuminati
Yeah, I was about to say.
confirmed is the biggest one.
All I know is that pretty much all the suspicions about Kubrick being involved about the
he was
Illuminati were
murdered.
confirmed in
Uh-huh.
Eyes Wide Shut.
And he was murdered over it.
Give me
Right.
give me the elevator pitch on Kubrick being the leader of the New World Order.
Well, they killed him because he pretty much
Yeah.
brought him out of the shadows, which I
Hoffa,
could
Kennedy,
confused why
Kubrick.
if you're in the Illuminati you spill the
Well,
beans.
well,
but
I mean, I think if I'm not mistaken, people basically presumed the cult within Eyes Wide Shut to be the Illuminati, if I'm not mistaken. And
Really?
Yeah.
it's the orgy part, right?
right,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's what I'm referring
And there's a
to,
lot of
yeah.
like down the rabbit hole
And
stuff.
especially the scene whenever the guy comes to the gate and they don't actually talk, he just hands them the note
Yeah.
and stuff like
there's
that.
the 5
Yeah,
stars,
but that's
the
just-
pointed stars at the Christmas party.
Right? Yeah.
I know, but like that's just. I mean,
I-
he's
I-
done
I-
stuff like that
I agree.
before.
It's people just blowing it out of proportion and
the
just
government
taking it for
didn't
what
come
it is.
after him for putting
But-
a polo shirt on Danny.
But
in The
also, I mean,
Shining.
Illuminati aside, couldn't you just say that what he was getting at was the corruption of power? Like
Yes.
the whole thing
Yeah.
is about
Yeah.
Bill throwing around his money. His name is Bill, and then
He's a doctor,
and he
Uh,
realizes-
being a
His name is
doctor gets
Bill,
him
yeah.
anywhere.
he realizes he's not even close to this upper where they just manipulate everything.
Right.
And I think that's an important, like, he was kind of touching on something that we talk about now, like Wild with the 1%, and like that stuff
Yeah.
happens and it goes on.
You and I should really watch Eyes Wide Shut.
We should.
again.
Yeah.
We
We
should.
should revisit it.
But it's also awesome that it's set during Christmas. It came out in July, so there's a lot of commentary on capitalism, consumerism, and the
man.
notion of what Christmas actually started as, which was like a pagan Roman.
a pagan holiday in the fucking
and
springtime.
so he literally goes
Idiots. You got
during
the wrong
Christmas
day.
during Christmas to an orgy, which is what the Romans were doing during Christmas.
Man, we gotta fix Christmas. That sounds pretty dope.
Caligula.
Yeah, it was
Motherfucker.
called
Let's rewrite.
Saturnalia, and they worshiped Saturn. And the whole point of Saturnalia was the inverse. So like slaves would serve their or slaves would become their masters, and you do it, but the Roman style. You had orgies in the streets, and it was like 3 days long.
No slaves, and we can just bring that back.
What happened? Well, Rome. Well, what happened was once the Catholic Church got big, they said they couldn't separate Rome from there, and so they just said, "We'll make it Christmas." And so that's how they brought them
Most
into.
Christians are unaware of the fact.
A lot of them are based on Roman
their
holidays.
religion comes from
I mean,
paganism.
I'm an agnostic atheist, which I know is very
An agnostic atheist.
yeah. But
How do those work?
Yeah,
so
that seems like
basically, I know. Basically, the way I view it is that if you ask me the question yes or no, do I believe there's a God? My answer is no.
No.
But that's the atheist part. But if you ask me the question, is there a possibility of a God existing? My answer is yes, because my argument is that there's no evidence supporting the existence of a God. Certainly not one that's contextualized in any form of religion nowadays.
The white dude who walks on water.
Right.
No.
Any of that kind of stuff. There's no evidence supporting any of that. But there's also no scientific evidence up to this point saying that there's no utter possibility of an orchestrator or of a God figure.
We're in a simulation.
There is no factual support supporting that. Even though there's a lot of theories, the Big Bang, that I all believe in, that's exactly what they are, theories.
Turtle.
And I realize that, and I'm not going to deny the possibility of one existing. So that's why I call myself an agnostic atheist.
For the first time yesterday, I called myself a Buddhist atheist because I've been like so into like mindfulness and like spirituality and shit.
Right.
So I'm like, I think I'm a Buddhist atheist.
If there is any religion I do truly respect, it is Buddhism. Because
was Steven was what's his face religious in any way, shape, or form?
He was born and raised Jewish, but he didn't practice.
Oh, he was okay. So he never had a bar mitzvah or anything like that.
He might have, but he wasn't a practicing.
Cause I don't feel like I really see any of that. It's like
there's not the only real.
You said he was gonna make a Holocaust movie. Also, time check. We have 9 minutes.
The Holocaust, and there's people that read The Shining as a Holocaust parable too, which you get into that. But the Holocaust was, especially during the Cold War, it was still so heavy on everybody that this happened. Yeah. So you can read a lot of his view of society and humanity in this nihilistic kind of, because the Holocaust happened, and a lot of post-war people started to question, saying,
I can read it. Has he written a book?
No. But I think you can read the Aryan papers that he's working on.
That would be so cool if he wrote a book.
But I wonder what a Holocaust movie is, Stanley Kubrick.
I know,
wonder what
right?
that would look like.
It's one of those things.
But he was so, if you look at his view of humanity, it's very dark. And a lot of that came from, and a lot of that was post-war. Once you started to see,
Doctor Strangelove, you really see that a lot.
Once you started to see the horrors coming out of what people were doing to other people, it affected a lot of filmmaking. Because how do you deal with that? Like, you're walking around and then you realize, they just systematically murdered 6 million people.
Well, it also helped spring like Italian neorealism and things of that nature, where we saw films rawer, if that's a word, more raw than we ever have before.
So it weighed heavy on him, especially his Jewish heritage is just.
I never knew that.
Anyway,
Allison, the rotation is to you. Eyes wide shut. What do you got?
What do you mean?
Like, what are your overall interpretations
I've done nothing
of the film?
but talk about how much I love it. So what else do you want from me?
I don't know. I was just going in terms of rotation.
You may also
7 out of 10.
You can agree or disagree. As you guys get older, I'm much older than you, and you get in more stable, monogamous relationships. It's very, but it's very interesting the way, because he was later in his life doing this, looking back, and it's a look at two people in a long-term relationship, in the issues with fantasy and with dealing with that, and they do deal with it, and so it's kind of it's almost a happy ending because they do end up together.
Right? Yeah.
That's why, like I said, 15 minutes ago, I said one of my favorite parts about Eyes Wide Shut is how they handle the idea of marriage.
I mean, like literally, the last line is, "Well, it's simple. We fuck."
Yeah. Which is hilarious that was the end of his career was on that word.
Right.
I would love like a Reddit theory connecting his, and I won't spoil his character in Magnolia to the character in Eyes Wide Shut. It like enlightens him. Respect the cunt. And tame the cock.
No, it's respect the cock and tame the cunt. Yeah. Oh my
Fucking
God.
maniac.
Dude.
You need to watch
you,
that
You,
movie.
you really need to.
And
If you do
Paul
end up
Thomas
watching
Anderson.
Magnolia, please email me your thoughts.
Paul
on that
Thomas
movie.
Anderson flexes all over that.
But
movie.
I think Eyes Wide Shut is a mature Kubrick.
Yeah.
At the end, saying he's reflecting back and saying, he's been in marriage for a long time,
Yeah.
and he's looking at marriage isn't as clear cut as we're just happy all the time, and
he's
there
a
is
father,
desire,
too.
there is.
Didn't his family have interesting thoughts on Eyes Wide Shut?
They might.
I'm pretty sure. Like
I don't know if
can't-
they're big fans of it because
exactly.
it's not finished.
Right. I remember like they weren't initially fans of it because it wasn't a finished Kubrick product. And I can't help but think like his wife didn't have problems with Kubrick himself making the film. I don't
Oh,
think
she didn't like it.
But she did not like the movie. Like
She didn't like
did
it
not like the
because
premise of the movie.
He wanted to make Eyes Wide Shut early, I think it was before 2001, because he read the novella, which is Arthur Schnitzler's, I'm saying that right. And he was writing back in 1919. He was friends with Freud. So there's a lot of Freud, which Kubrick loved Freudian.
Mm-hmm.
And she did not like, because the book is more graphic.
Right. Yeah.
She was uncomfortable with it.
I mean, you can get into that too with Lolita.
Wow. Well, that was probably the most graphic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Are
dude.
those people
I
here
think we
again?
could. They
Pussy
are.
Sour?
We
Oh,
have
of
our
course they
people
are.
out.
Oh,
I
the
think we could do
people.
5 episodes of talking about
The people are
this.
back.
The people are
The
back.
people.
Because we didn't get to talk about Midsummer and really.
Dustin, if
That's
you would like to
okay.
come back for a third time, you're always welcome in the studio, my man.
Your fans are gonna be like, God.
I'm
dude,
thinking
I
a
don't
half
think so.
half Star Wars, half modern horror episode. How does
Please,
that
you
sound?
guys can sit over there and talk about how much you like Revenge of the Sith, and I'll sit over here by myself and shit on it.
So
I think I'm the only one who hates on
I
it.
guess I'll plug
Right,
a little
maybe
bit.
wrong.
I'm going to Philly at in middle of April, and I'm presenting on Midsummer.
Wait,
And part of
really?
part of my dissertation is on transcendental horror.
You want,
So
you want
it's
someone to film an interview?
Midsummer,
guys?
The
This-
Witch.
Why are you guys going to
Midsummer.
Philly? What is it for? A conference?
I'm at the I'm presenting on a
Man,
Ari Aster
We should.
panel.
Our film club should go and film
Dude,
an interview.
We would
As
totally
long as
like to
Corona
join.
doesn't get everybody. I
We
may
have
be
a budget.
presenting to no one.
We have a budget, man. We should
Yeah,
come out there and do that.
we would
anyway,
totally
that's,
love to do
I
that.
won't talk about the budget on air, Allison. Don't forget. She's like,
I mean, just really quickly on those things. What's great about those movies to me is that just shows horror isn't dead.
No.
Like we're not just getting stuck with these Blumhouse production movies.
And they draw heavily. If you like The Shining, they draw heavily from it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You can absolutely see, especially in The Lighthouse to me, is where I see a lot of Hitchcockian and Kubrick influence.
even Jordan Peele, he references.
Yeah.
He references Kubrick a lot.
Yeah.
In like Us and
Yep.
Get Out.
I think The Lighthouse does a perfect job of nailing that Kubrick atmosphere and
Yeah.
then kind of taking a weird.
But then there's
Hitchcock
weird
approach
dark
to it.
comedy in it. It's a really good. The
It reminds
tone is great.
to
in
me,
it.
it's Twilight Zone and Kubrick kind of.
Willem Dafoe is one of those actors I always wish had the opportunity to work with Kubrick because I feel like that would have been a
He's a
terrific
great
pairing.
character actor.
He's so. Great.
All right, well, that's about all the time we got, guys. Dustin, thank you again for
Thanks
coming
for
back
having me
part 2.
again.
This was fun.
Yeah, it was
Can
awesome.
again, just in case they missed the first episode, there is another episode out with Dustin. We talk about 2 hours of Kubrick's
Yes,
filmography.
absolutely.
And then, do you have a place where people can find you, or a website, or anything like that? Or
No.
if not, that's fine. Totally.
Give your
I've
I
had
used
some,
to-
handle.
we've had some
Twitter.
guests just be like, I don't want to be.
I
Followed.
used to have a podcast, but then I got
We very much like that we've been able to discuss Stanley Kubrick with you. It's something I've been wanting to discuss a long time, and finally glad we have it all under wraps.
so fun.
And
dude.
I would really love to have you back a
I'll
third
come back
time.
whenever you want me. I
Bet.
Yeah.
Start making.
Fat
love,
old
I love
bets.
running my mouth.
This has
Yeah,
been
me too.
AVHD Podcast with Dustin Fisher, Allison Bailey, Hunter Burress, and myself, Logan Lusk. Thank you very much for joining.
Shout
and
out to Ryan.
Have a fat day. Oh, and yeah, how can I forget Ryan, the guy behind the cameras?
Yeah.
Giving us a big old fat smile right now. You just can't see it.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Have a good one. Thanks for joining.
Bye.